This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting of May 2nd, 2022. Call the order, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilman Mitchell.
Here.
Councilman Noah.
Here.
Councilwoman Walchuk.
Here.
And Mayor Walagora.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Did I get you again, Mike? I'm
All right.
sorry.
It's fine.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Councilwoman Walchuk.
Yes.
And Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, I have a proposed modification to the agenda. I'd like to pull consent agenda item B off of the consent agenda and move it to unfinished business. And I'll explain why later.
Is that a motion?
He sets the motion, sure.
That's it.
Yeah, sure. Legal.
Support.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Councilwoman Walchuk.
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Approval of the minutes for regular and closed sessions of April 18th, 2022. Any issues or changes? Okay. Hey, citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. This is the only time during the council meeting that you're allowed to address council, with the exception of the public hearing for the Brownfield Plan. So any other topics other than that one, if you're live, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records and begin. And then we'll move to virtual. And seeing no one here, Charlie? All right, no guests this evening. Okay, we'll move right into the public hearing, Brownfield Plan for 123 Water Street. I will open the public hearing and we will have a report by McClelland. He's the manager of Brownfield Redevelopment for Otwell, Mawby, PC.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I'm McClelland with Otwell Mawby. I've also represented the city and the Brownfield Authority for the last 17 years, I think. Since 2005 or so, 16 years. Pleased to be here to talk about the One Water Street project, 123 Water Street project there. And Charlie gives me the on-call signal. Just have a brief 2-hour presentation, so sit back and relax. So, I'm sorry. Great, thank you very much. Just want to talk a little bit about the project summary, and then you can cut me off afterwards and say that's enough. Talk a litto bit about the project as well. Discuss the eligible property and eligible activities, which are key factors in the Brownfield Plan. Going to talk, about the Brownfield Plan itself and how that works and how it operates. And as well, we also have a EGLE grant. Just trying to think that that is an important factor within the project as well. Successful in getting an EGLE grant. Here we go.
There. That should be great.
Great, thanks. So I'm just going to shrink that just a bit. There, is that good? Yeah, a group called Pranve, which is a hotel developer and operator that actually have hotels in Alpena as well, has a purchase agreement with Target Alpena for the former Alpena Power Company site on 123 Water Street and 310 North 2nd, corner of Water Street and North 2nd. The proposal is to develop a Marriott Fairfield Inn. Pretty exciting opportunity, about a 5-story building with about 70 plus rooms and integrated parking within the project, along with surface parking as well. So a good use of land there. There are some extensive environmental conditions and site conditions, which are kind of create some extraordinary costs. And that's exactly what Brownfield plans are supposed to be able to address and deal with on that project. And these really threaten the economic viability. Without some help and support and incentives, the project really can't move forward as well. And we were lucky enough to secure an EGLE Brownfield grant of $1,615,000 and a loan for $450,000. It's been preliminarily approved, but the money is set aside for us. All we have to do is kind of get some of the work that you have tonight, the resolution tonight for that loan and grant, and put in the paperwork for it. So we're in good shape for that grant, and that reduces the amount that has to be captured for Brownfield TIF and reduces the time frame for capture. So a very important piece. But however, there's still some activities on that site that aren't covered by the EGLE grant and require some financial assistance through the Brownfield Plan. And essentially how the Brownfield Plan works is for these extraordinary costs, they're spent up front, and then over time, the increased incremental taxes generated by the increased investment on the project, almost $11 million, are captured and reimbursed over time to the developer and to the city in this case. Well, there's quite a bit of city public infrastructure included in this plan as well and can pay for that. The huge advantage is that 46% of those dollars are from state taxes as well. So we're bringing in state taxes to be able to pay for that. It's like a state grant over the long term, which is a huge advantage. I'm sure most everybody knows where the project is, but and it's the construction of a new 5-story hotel. There's a quick view of kind of the first floor plan for it. It gives you an idea about what the site is. The city is maintaining the property along the river as well. And there's some proposed enhancements to the waterfront park there as well for this. Gives you an idea about what the elevations will be like along Water Street there. Anticipated investment of about $11 million, a pretty significant investment in the downtown. Creation of about 18 jobs, 18 full-time jobs and 17 part-time jobs. Anticipating site development this fall. If all goes well, we have quite a bit of work to do on the EGLE grant. There's quite a process to go through to approve expenditures for that. But hopeful that site development can start this fall. And again, there's a significant opportunity here to fund park improvements and major public infrastructure, water, sewer improvements that I'll talk a little bit about later. The eligible property again is the former APC site, and the city is maintaining the properties along the river as well. And unfortunately, there is some significant soil contamination on the site. A long time ago, it used to be an auto repair shop. And after they were done with solvents, they used to just kind of put them out the back a little bit. So we do have some significant contamination on the site. This doesn't show up quite so well, but across the site, there is some contamination, some of which is classified as hazardous waste. Actually, it's the dry cleaning solvent, tetrachloroethylene or PERC. It's also used in solvents as well, in degreasers in those arrangements. And so it's across that site. Likely any of the soils that come off of that site will have to be characterized as hazardous, and it increases the disposal cost about 10 times. It goes from about $30 a ton to about $300 a ton, because it has to be taken down to a facility in Detroit for treatment. So there's some significant cost in dealing with this project. They're not going to dig a basement or anything, but there's still soils that have to come off the site for the foundations. The geotechnical investigation identified some unstable soils, and so there's also special foundations that are necessary because of the site condition. Basically, have to strengthen, put H-piles in, and go down to bedrock and kind of create a framework for the building to be built on. Another additional expense due to site conditions. And then finally, any remaining contamination exceeds vapor screening criteria. And so there'll probably need to be an installation of a vapor mitigation system underneath the building, which is a series of pipes that draw any vapors from beneath the building and exhaust them out above the building so that they don't get into the interior of the building and expose people that are in the building to that. There also is a liner that goes underneath it as well. So it's not a complex system, pretty straightforward, but the approval process is pretty significant for that through EGLE. So again, we're fortunate to have a couple of funding sources for the project. One is the EGLE grant and EGLE loan. Through the loan, there are very favorable conditions, the $450,000 loan to do some of the work on the project. Those terms, there's no principal or interest for 5 years, and it's just 1.5% after that. So by getting that loan, we've reduced those costs pretty significantly as well. But we also need to utilize that Brownfield TIF, some of that increased dollars generated to pay off that loan. And that's the subject in your second action tonight is the EGLE loan approval. Also, the EGLE grant will fund a number of the environmental activities. And we're fortunate also to have an EPA grant to do investigation on that site, so we can contribute some dollars from that EPA grant to the project as well. There are also some private non-environmental eligible activities. Integrated parking is approved for reimbursement, as well as kind of the major activity. And then the other infrastructure improvements, curbs, gutters around the site in the public right-of-way as well. Also, some of the site preparation activities, relocation of some active utilities and those sorts of things to prepare for the construction of the project. Importantly, we're able to include public non-environmental eligible activities here. And perhaps Steve can speak a little bit more about this, but there is an opportunity. There's needs for water and sewer upgrades, significant needs for water and sewer upgrades, estimated to be about $2 million. And so by including this within the Brownfield Plan, the city is contributing 25% of those costs, but the other taxing jurisdictions, including the state, are providing the other 75% of the costs. Otherwise, those costs would have to come out of the sewer and water fund, strictly from ratepayers. So a great opportunity to bring in some outside dollars for public infrastructure here as well. The Brownfield Plan that you have before you really identifies the eligible property. It details the eligible activities that are included, and you might look at this as a budget document. And I think you're going to be talking a little bit about budgets later on there. Yeah. So this is really the budget document for the Brownfield Plan. Costs cannot go over without coming back to you, but this is the budget, that's the maximum amount that could be done. And along with that budget for the eligible activities, it estimates the tax capture over that time period. Now, you might notice in this project, the tax capture ends for local taxes at 22 years and 24 years. The private eligible activities would be paid off in 10 years, which has been basically the practice for other Brownfield projects here. But because we're adding that public infrastructure cost, we're extending that time frame, but also gaining the leverage of those other dollars as well. The Brownfield Plan is approved by the Alpena Authority for Brownfield Redevelopment. It has been approved at their recent meeting. Interestingly, in these projects, the DDA has first rights to local TIF capture. So in a normal activity, the DDA would gain those projects for their TIF capture. But in order for us to leverage the state dollars, the state says you've got to contribute an equivalent amount of local dollars. And the mechanism to do that is through an interlocal agreement under the Urban Cooperation Act, which provides for the DDA to forego its capture, to combine that with the Brownfield TIF, and to pay those costs off. Once those costs are paid off, all of that capture goes back to the DDA for its share of taxes. So they capture all local taxes. They don't capture the intermediate school district taxes, nor state education tax or school operating tax. Also, it's important to note that schools are held harmless in these projects. They receive their foundation grants per pupil costs. That's the combination of the school operating dollars that are generated, and then the state foundation or the state education fund makes up the rest, the balance of that. In addition, intermediate school districts are reimbursed for any costs that are captured as well. So schools are held harmless for us. Yep. Yep.
So the DDA has first rights to TIF capture. They don't have to, but they could forego their capture.
That's correct. They're acting tomorrow, actually, on a interlocal agreement to approve that. So they must approve that, that activity. Yep. Yep. And if we don't get the local capture, we don't get the state tax capture. And so there's really no project. The state says you've got to have this in order to get our money, in essence. Yep. So yeah, they're meeting tomorrow at 3 to consider the agreement. Notices are sent to taxing jurisdictions, which has already been done 10 days prior to this public hearing. The public hearing is held and the Brownfield Plan is considered by the City Council, which is the action considered this evening. For the EGLE grant and loan, we've already kind of talked about this. We've been approved or invited to submit for the grant and loan. An access agreement has to be executed, and that will be executed between the Brownfield Authority and the developer. And importantly, in your packet is a resolution for loan repayment. And there's some exciting language in there, like you're committing your revenue sharing, potentially. And Anna threw something at me when I first suggested that. So, and the way this is protected, in essence, is the state requires this plan to make sure that there's a loan. The loan is actually with the Brownfield Authority, backed up by the city in this case. But we have a reimbursement agreement which transfers that loan obligation both contractually to the developer and personally through a personal guarantee by the developer's representatives. So there's a backup to that repayment if there's not enough brownfield TIF. We'll also know pretty certainly and have eminent idea that the project is going to move forward before we allow and start for any kind of activities to happen off of that loan. So they'll have to have their construction financing in place. They'll have to have their construction contracts ready to go before we start doing any work that might draw against that loan. The loan is actually for the special foundations. And so that would be, it'd be an early part of the development, but would not be part of the early site work. So we've tried to work through that process to ensure that kind of approval. We have a little bit of work to do on that reimbursement agreement for that, but that should be coming back to you at a subsequent meeting as well. So we anticipate that grant or loan contract would be sometime in June and we'd be ready to go. We have to write work plans for all the expenditures under that grant. So it takes some time to develop and get authorization for all the work plans. We're actually we talked today with my colleagues to talk about some work on the EPA grant to do some initial investigation. So we'll be ready to hit the ground running when we're able to go. So also, we have the Brownfield Plan for local capture. There is a requirement for the state to specifically approve and authorize the expenditure for this. So we have to prepare an Act 3D1 work plan that has to go into the state for approval. EGLE approves the plan for environmental eligible activities. We'll be working with them carefully on the grant and loan. So that's a transparent process. And we look at each step, each activity there. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation and Michigan Strategic Fund approved the non-environmental eligible activities. That's kind of a one-shot deal. As a matter of fact, we put that all together, put that package together, send it off to them. They evaluate it and determine whether they'll approve state tax capture. We've had a number of conversations with the EGLE or with the MEDC representatives, very excited and supportive of the project. So you just have to kind of dot all the I's and cross a few T's. Oops. If I can do that. Advance. There we go. And it's up to a 60-day approval process, but that's actually kind of generous. That's by legislation. It usually takes a little bit longer to do that. I talked a bit about that reimbursement agreement. I'll try and flash through this a little more quickly, but describes those fiscal and operational roles. So there's an agreement. We have the Brownfield Plan, we have the EGLE grant, we have the Act 3D1 work plan, and now we have this reimbursement agreement, which lays out and details the relationship to get the money, to what the obligations are of the developer, and what their opportunity is to get the dollars for that. Again, it provides for those reimbursement allocations, who gets the money when, and all of the conditions that are necessary before we provide any of those dollars for them. And again, included in here, it protects the Brownfield Authority and the city from liability. There's a process for documented expenses. Again, this is a budget document. They have to show what their actual expenses are by invoices and paid receipts, waivers of lien. So it's based on their actual expenditures. And again, importantly, guarantees that EGLE loan repayment. So that's approved by the Brownfield Authority and the developer, and it will come back to you because we have infrastructure improvements. The city is going to be receiving some reimbursement off the project as well. So that reimbursement will be coming back to you subsequently. It's kind of the schedule that has gone through now that the Brownfield Authority met on April 12th and approved some of the application materials. We sent out the notices, the public hearing and Brownfield Plan approval tonight. The interlocal agreement will be considered by the DDA tomorrow. We hope for that EGLE grant loan contract in June, and then expect the Act 3D1 work plan to be approved in the fall, so those activities can commence. So the request for you tonight is twofold. One is to approve the Brownfield Plan for the 123 Water Street. That is one specific action. And then secondly, approve the loan resolution for the EGLE Brownfield loan that's in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions if appropriate.
I have two short ones, I think.
I got 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours. Just going back to the vapor mitigation system, what does that mean? Does that mean that things are going to be pumped into the air? Or
Yeah, these are actually vapors that are already kind of filtering up and coming up through the soils.
right.
This is just a situation where those vapors, we don't want those vapors inside a building, inside an enclosed area. And so all that's happening is taking those vapors that would normally vent anyway, collecting them and then allowing them in a controlled fashion to be exhausted. So it's not like a, industrial air pollution kind of
Right.
permit. These are vapors that are coming up through the soil anyway. But we're putting a building on it. We want to make certain that it's not in an enclosed area that would expose people to that contamination. And so it's being distributed.
Will that be for a limited time then? There's only so much contamination.
Yeah, it may attenuate over time, and there's testing requirements that you kind of have to meet and to go through on that. So typically these are systems, they could be passive, where you just use the airflows to do that, or they may be active where there's some fans or pumps on them. We'll start out with a passive system, see if that's working well enough and meeting all the requirements. And then there may be an active system that could be turned off over time.
And my second question, just about parking, where are they going to integrate the parking?
It's going to be kind of on the first floor. I don't think I have a plan for it, but it'll be on the first floor, like the front and back half of the building, around Water Street. So people kind of pull in and they'll be in the back half. And then the lobby area, and I think some of the amenities will be on that. And then the main area, dining area, will be up and above.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And this is always a question that I kind of have, I guess. So let's just, so from the get-go, the loan is on the developer after everything is taken care of. So let's just say 5-10 years from now, that said developer just it goes under. Where does that loan, or he sells to something, what's the track of that? Where does it go?
Yep, absolutely. Great questions. The hope and the concept and idea is the increased taxes will pay for that loan, and it's in first position after the bonds for the water and sewer, if that's the financing tool. So we have first rights to those TIF revenues that are generated by the project. If it's built out, and even if the hotel goes under, somebody's going to buy it at whatever price on the dollar. The assessment, and others may be able to speak to this, but the assessed value will diminish a little bit, but it's still a hotel building without those assessed values. And those taxes, while they may reduce a little bit, should be, still consistent. So that's really what we're depending on. If the hotel goes under, we'll still have taxes generated after it's built.
And that's what
If it's sold, there's also an assignment agreement in there. And if they want any of the subsequent TIF revenues, they'll have to come and describe what that arrangement is and what the assignment would be for that. So within the reimbursement agreement. But great question.
good question.
Always got to know what happens if, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Really appreciate
2
it.
hours went by so fast.
I thought fast.
So let's so we'll break that into 2 motions. Oh, Charlie, to do your
open public comment first.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I jumped right into our discussion and did that. Thank you, Mike, keeping me on track. Any public comment related to that? You please come up, name and address, and absolutely.
Really just a question. She addressed the beginning. I didn't hear a number of parking spaces. It doesn't seem like there's enough parking there. How many do you feel that would accommodate for that large of a building?
I don't have the number of parking spaces. I may be able to get what their plans are.
Okay.
On my information. I've just been working on the Brownfield side.
Okay. I just wondered that. It seems like a great idea. Just.
And they have to go through planning and zoning and meet all the zoning requirements as well. So whatever's required by planning and zoning would be met by the project.
I'd like to know that number if I could in the future. Thank you. Sounds great.
Thank you, Angie. And those are good points to make. And again, that'll go through the Plan Commission. Some of the preliminaries of this, you can't really look at the ground that's there because, like Mac was explaining, a lot of the parking will be the first floor. So it'll be under part of the building structure itself. So, but Montiel will stay on top of that as
Like the whole first floor, that was what
I can't say it's the whole first floor, but it was a significant amount.
Parking, like in the park there, sure some parking.
Oh, in their numbers anyway?
Yeah.
We're not worried about the water table levels, no?
Yeah, Yeah, they're not going to be going down below. They're not putting a basement in or anything like that.
It's not going to be in the ground.
Might put a swimming pool in down below there for much.
All right, any other public comment? Any written comments to the clerk's office?
Understood.
Going to close the public hearing. Council discussion. I have none. It's a good plan.
Good plan.
I know that.
All the questions.
I guess for anybody that's been keeping track of that property, this is quite a distance from what we envisioned that property to be used for, but we, in my opinion, had the two best guys with Jim Clarich and Mike Mahler for years trying to get a developer that would put in the perfect scenario of living space and retail space, and that just wasn't going to happen. So there was way more interest in the hotel than anything else. So that kind of dictated what we were kind of left with as far as who ended up with it, if anybody's questioning that. But I have no other discussion. Anyone else?
No questions.
All right, we can, action A and B are right there.
There. Okay. I move we approve resolution 2022-10.
Second.
Councilman Noah,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
I move we approve resolution 2022-11.
Second.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
and Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. And thank you again, Mac and Mateo and everybody that worked on that for sure. Next up is a consent agenda, and we only have A on there now, which is bills to be allowed in the amount of $242,656.09.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Go ahead. We both said it. We did. I'll say.
Give it to Walczak.
I was the runner.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilman Noah,
Yes.
and Councilwoman Walczak.
Yes.
I'll get it one day.
All right. Next up, I have one proclamation this evening. This is for Older Americans Month. Whereas the city of Alpena and the counties of Presqu'île, Alpena, Alcona, and Oscoda, which are served by Habitat for Humanity Northeast Michigan, includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their strength, wisdom, and experience to our community. And whereas communities benefit when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are welcomed, included, and supported. And whereas Habitat for Humanity Northeast Michigan recognizes our need to create a community that provides the services and supports older Americans' need to thrive and live independently for as long as possible. And whereas Habitat for Humanity Northeast Michigan can work to build an even better community for our older residents by planning programs that encourage independence, ensuring activities are responsive to individual needs and preferences, increasing access to services that support aging in place. Now, therefore, I, Matthew J. Walagora, by the virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Alpena, do hereby proclaim May of 2022 to be Older Americans Month in Alpena, and urge every resident to recognize the contributions of older citizens, help to create an inclusive society, and join efforts to support older Americans' choice about how they age in their communities. I don't think anyone from Habitat is here this evening to take part in that. All right, next we have report of officers. First is the fiscal year 2022-23 preliminary budget presentation. Anna Soik, the finance director, lead on that.
Get 2 hours too, right?
Sorry, he's already cut into your time. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Mac. Okay, first I would just like to thank the department heads that had so much involvement in putting this together and always being so conscientious of the budget. I do also appreciate Rachel, and of course my staff, especially Leland, for looking over the budget, and to Jennifer for basically formatting the whole thing and putting it together. It's really quite an undertaking, and I really appreciate the efforts. So, can you zoom that a little bit, Charlie? Maybe not. Okay. So there, as I presented before, there are certain things that have to be presented per the charter. And that's what these descriptions are at the top. So this first one is a brief and concise budget summary showing the estimated receipts and expenditures of each fund and the total of all funds. A statement of the estimated financial condition of each city fund reflecting the estimated surplus or deficit in each such fund. So all the way over to the left are the funds that we budget for. We are not required to budget for all funds. We have a lot more, but we are only required to budget for the general fund and special revenue funds, but we do also budget for the sewer and water funds, which are enterprise funds, and then the equipment fund. We just started doing that one a few years ago, and that's an internal service fund. So the very first one is the general fund, and the way that this is set up is that in the first column after the descriptions, we have fiscal year 22 revenues. So for the general fund, we have 10.4 million in revenues that we have budgeted for so far, and 10.5 million in expenditures, which is projecting an $81,490 deficit for fiscal year 22. If you recall, for when we passed the budget last year for fiscal year 22, we had projected to decrease fund balance by about 233,000, but it's not looking that way. It looks like we're going to end up better. And if we get the personal property tax reimbursement in May, which we're told not to budget for, but we've been getting it for the last few years, we'll probably definitely be adding to fund balance again. So for fiscal year 23, we are projecting 11.3 million in revenue for the general fund and 11.9 million in expenditures, which leads to a deficit of $608,362. And that's not a misprint or an error, that is intentional. We currently are at June 30, 21, we had a general fund balance of 38.5%. And using up or decreasing by 608,000 would take it to about 26%, which is still 6% above our max fund balance policy. So the fund balance at June 30, 21 was 3.9 million. The estimated fund balance at June 30, 22 is 3.8 million. And we are estimating fund balance at June 30, 23 to decrease to 3.2 million. Budget stabilization fund, this is one that we haven't contributed to in the last few years. All that we're expecting for revenues are interest income. We are budgeting to add $5,000 plus additional interest to that fund, and expecting that fund balance to be $35,431 at June 30, 23.
And what's that for?
That's the rainy day fund. Yeah.
It better just sprinkle.
It's not a whole lot.
Quick shower.
It is stabilized.
Someone years ago, I know I've asked that same question before, because it just seems interesting that it's a budget stabilization fund and it really doesn't have enough in there to really do much.
Yeah.
Do we have to have it? Is it?
We don't.
What's the story with that, if you don't mind?
In reading in past budgets, it used to be higher. I can't remember specifically what it was used for, but it was depleted and we've been building it back up slowly.
Okay.
Very slowly.
Yeah, very slowly. Major street fund, we are projecting a deficit for the current fiscal year of 93,000. And then adding to it, almost 132,000 for fiscal year 23. And then a projected ending fund balance for fiscal year 23 of 898,000. Local streets, we are projecting a deficit of 135,000 for the current fiscal year. A deficit in next fiscal year of 276,000 and leaving a fund balance of 217,769 at the end of fiscal year 23. The Marina, we are projected to have a surplus in the current fiscal year of 16,497. And then in next fiscal year, we're going to deficit spend 196,625. Right now, they have a fund balance of 180,000. So by adding the 16,000 that we're estimating we're going to have in the current fiscal year, that is going to be used up completely for that 196,000 in next fiscal year. So that would leave a zero in the fund balance, which is fine because it is subsidized by the general fund. There is some large capital projects that are in the budget for the Marina for the next fiscal year. I think one of them is, oh, Shannon's not in here, like 300,000 for the floating decks, is it? Is that what it is? I think, yeah. So that's the big expense there.
What do you anticipate in 23 that we would, for any projects that we want to undertake after June of next year? Then the plan would be to just take and move money out of the fund balance to cover any kind of.
I think we're going to cross a lot of things off the list in fiscal year 23. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, we also are waiting to hear back on a couple of grants. So the only thing that we might have is a match towards that.
Okay.
Not that there won't be any other projects, but we really would be looking at, crossing some major things that are much needed out there off the list.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Thanks.
The tree park improvement fund, that one in this current year, we only have interest earnings of about $80. It does have a fund balance of $20,889, and we plan to use $15,000 in next fiscal year, which would leave that fund at about $6,000 by the end of 23. The Authority for Brownfield Redevelopment, this is the fund where we get the administrative fee from the Brownfield plans. So this one specifically is for 600 Walnut Street, which will be starting with the upcoming 23 or 22 tax year. I'm estimating about $1,000 from that, and then expenditures of $10,000. That was the transfer that I mentioned at the last meeting, where we've gone probably like 5 years without transferring anything from that fund to the general fund to cover our expenses. So we're going to finally do that in 23 and move $10,000. So by the end of fiscal year 23, we'd have about $6,000 left. The Downtown Development Authority, number 2 and number 5. So as I mentioned last meeting, number 5 is going to merge into number 2. They will become one starting with the next fiscal year. So for fiscal year 22 that we're in, for DDA fund number 2, we're projecting a deficit of $12,297, but then adding $1,701 to the number 5 fund. So that would be, that fund balance is going to transfer then to the other one when they merge. And in the next fiscal year, we're going to deficit spend $9,850. And we can do that because there's fund balance. So at the end of fiscal year 23, the DDA would have a fund balance of $233,829. And then you can see the other one is wiped out. The Building Inspection Fund, we're projecting to have a surplus in the current fiscal year of $4,734 and deficit of $31,601 in next fiscal year. So the combination of adding and taking away is going to use up the fund balance, and it's going to have zero at June 30, 23. that is another fund that is subsidized by the general fund. And I don't think that, well, I'm not really sure what their fund balance would be used on. It's not like they have capital projects in the building inspection fund. The expenses there are operating. The revenue is rental inspections and permits and those types of things. So we would use that one up too. The next budgeted fund is the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA. This is a new fund, and in fiscal year 22, we received $523,138, and we plan to expend $101,000 in this fiscal year still. And we would have at the end, the fund balance will be $421,569. In fiscal year 23, we're going to get the second payment, probably in like October or November, and that's going to be about $521,040. And we plan to have expenditures of $523,000. This is all following the plan that City Manager Spolinsky presented last meeting. So with the amount that we're going to receive plus the expenditures actually is a deficit, but we're still going to end up at $419,609. And I did find out at the training that I went to last week that we can invest those funds if we don't have an immediate need for them. So we could do maybe something even short term, like 6 months or a year. Rates are going up, so it'd be nice to have a little bit of extra money if we know that we're not going to use it right away. So I guess I'd probably talk to Steve and see what his timeline is for the projects that we have planned with those funds. Maybe we can invest a few $100,000.
$100,000 in the bathrooms.
In the sewer fund, we are expecting a deficit of almost $889,000 and a deficit in next fiscal year of $2.2 million, which is going to take that down to $624,821 for a fund balance at the end of 23, which we're okay with that.
We're okay with it. And what
Yeah.
we see in 22, 23 is projects that we want to do that are just standard projects, capital improvements. Then also we've got all the money in there for if we get the Second Avenue grant, that takes us from, that's a $4 million project.
Yeah.
Half of it's from the grant. So, we've got to kind of account for all that. And geez, if we get it, great. And maybe we can, kind of go with some of these other projects as well, get some of these other ones knocked out. And if we do, we have a banner year and we get a lot done for our money. Probably end up carrying some over. I don't think that that'll be the final number probably at the end of the year, but we get a lot done if we get that grant. So,
That would be great.
Looking forward to it, hopefully.
On the water fund, it would be $156,000, almost $157,000 deficit for the current fiscal year, and then deficit in fiscal year 23 of $1.8 million, leaving a fund balance at the end of 23 of $1.2 million. And then the equipment fund in the current fiscal year, a deficit of almost $186,000. And then we would take $246,000 in next fiscal year from the fund balance and end with $1.8 million. So one of the things that I recently learned with the equipment fund is that we don't have to charge administrative fees to the equipment fund that is coming back to the general fund. Over the years, it's gone up and up and up, and it's preventing it from adding to fund balance. So I talked to an auditor at the training last week. I talked to our own auditor, and the auditor at training said, just rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of it. So the flip side of this is that it's a loss of revenue to the general fund. So that's why our auditor said to phase it out. So I decreased the admin fee by $50,000 in this fiscal year 23. I guess I could see what the effect is. But it's just a money shuffle. It's really the general fund is giving money to the equipment fund and the equipment fund's paying it back.
Yeah, so you lost me with the,
Sorry.
We've talked about this.
you're talking internally about. Kind of, that's exactly what it's doing, right? It's just going there and then it's coming back.
Mhm.
So,
It's no longer serving the purpose that it was put there for, which is, replacement of equipment.
replay, right? Because, so if it was gone, I guess this is for the future because I see it's still on here, but if this was gone, then if we needed to purchase a new vehicle, it would come out of the general fund. But this is a way to just accumulate something line itemed for that specific purpose.
Mhm.
It has a use because then you know that that's already set aside for something. So
Yeah. It has a large fund balance. I mean, it's 1.8 million. Yeah.
You're marking that money.
Yep.
You're paying rent back to the equipment.
right.
Do we have that in an account where it's
In a bank account?
interest earning and that kind of thing?
We have some of it in investments, and yeah, there's money in the bank too.
We do have a large fire engine purchase that you saw in the CIP, and, at any time, one of our, yes.
That's fine.
And, well, I'm getting to
Steve's
that.
being a little possessive of that
Yes,
money.
We have other equipment, snow plows and such that may need to be.
Right. So as long as this total, whether it's 1.8 million or any number, that's not part of the 26% fund.
No, at 26% is only general fund.
Right. So because if that were gone, then that money would be in the general fund and it would, so I think you might be right to leave it because we keep targeting 20%, which is policy, but we've never hit that, which is fine. It's fine because it's policy. We could change it tomorrow if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But that's not, if we kept bringing that down, let's say we decided one year we're going to bring it down to 20%, that money isn't already set aside for a new ladder truck or whatever it happens to be. And then so now if we need one right away, it's going to drop that down to like 15% or something.
So new this year, in the general fund, we are going to commit fund balance to certain things. We are committing 10,000 for fire equipment and then 50,000 towards a fire truck. So we have that sitting there, but it's not committed to anything specific. This will commit it only for that project,
Okay.
that purchase.
There's different tools that we can use to commit that money.
Mhm.
So it doesn't show up in the general fund, but it's still available to us, but it's not just swapping money between the equipment fund and general fund.
Yeah, the committing is going to happen in the equipment fund.
Oh,
We wanted to be a little more targeted about, what we're planning for in the future.
Not just equipment.
Mhm. So we were trying to figure out, well, how do we do this? Because we do have a capital projects fund, but in reading in the chart of accounts, that's not really the purpose of it. The capital projects fund is supposed to be used for like the construction of a new building, not for the purchase of equipment or vehicles.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one? On that slide? Oh, the first time using this. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is an estimate of the amount of money proposed to be raised by taxation and the amount to be raised from bond issues, which together with the estimated income from other sources will be necessary to meet the proposed expenditures. So over on the left side, we have the general fund, and we are estimating that we will receive 4.3 million from taxation. Estimated revenue from other sources in the general fund is 6.9 million for a total of 11.3 million for revenue for the general fund. And as a reminder, expenditures are at 11.9 million, which would equal 608,000 reduction from fund balance, as I mentioned earlier. So this year, if you look through the draft budget, there's documents in there from the assessor, Allenberg. And in there, he put a listing of all of the history of the property tax values. I can't remember if I mentioned this last meeting or not. Going back to 1977, and for fiscal year or for tax year 22, the increase is 6.43%. In that history, going all the way back to 77, there's only been 3 other tax years that were higher. Those were in 1979, 80, and 93. So we're making history here. But because of that, our millage is subject to a rollback under Headley. So for probably about the last 5 years, our operating millage for the general fund or general operating millage has been 16.1066 and it's going to be rolled back to 16.0373. And the same will happen for the dial-a-ride millage because that one like falls under our taxable value, the city's taxable value. So if you recall, it was increased to a mill, and last year it wasn't subject to Headley, but this year it's going to be rolled back to 0.9957, I think it is. The DDA has its own separate taxable value, and in that calculation, it will not be subject to a Headley rollback this year. So that one will remain at 1.9812. On the right side, the authority for Brownfield redevelopment, this is that fund where we get the administrative fee from the Brownfield. And as I mentioned earlier, this is, we're budgeting $1,000 for 600 Walnut. And then the $10,000 transfer is going to be, with those two things, it's a deduction from fund balance of $9,000. The DDA, total estimated revenue from taxation is almost $173,000. Estimated revenue from other sources is $33,000. And so that equals a grand total estimated revenue of almost $206,000. Total estimated expenditures are almost $216,000 for a deduction from fund balance of $9,850. Any questions on that slide? No?
No.
Sorry, it's a lot. Okay, this is where all the details at, and I'm not gonna go through every line, but this is a detailed statement of estimates of all anticipated income of the city from sources other than current taxes and borrowing, compared with the amounts received by the city from each of the same or similar resources for the last preceding and for the current year. Receipts for the current year shall be computed as the actual receipts to April 1st, plus the estimated receipts for April, May, and June. So in here, so at last meeting, I mentioned how we're presenting it based on functions. The functions we're only really using in the general fund because it's such a large fund. There's so many accounts in there that the easiest way to present it is just by function. So this first one is it's the general fund revenues, and it's the general government function. So in there we have the account number, the description, then we have last fiscal year's actual numbers. We have fiscal year 22's amended budget. Then we have actual receipts through March 31st of 22. Then we have estimated receipts for April, May, and June in this fiscal year. So those two columns added together equal the estimated current for fiscal 22. The next column over is the difference between budget and estimated. And then finally, the last column all the way to the right is what we're recommending for fiscal year 23. Any questions on the revenue? No? Okay. So many pages are all starting to look alike. It went too far. Is this going back, Charlie?
The page number is at the very top. It says 172, maybe.
Okay, so I need it to go back to the beginning of the expenditures.
Revenues are on page 7. Does that help?
Their page number is going to be different.
Okay.
Well, it'd be different in mine because I'm looking on the packet.
All right.
Mhm.
I think I'm almost there.
Mhm.
Can you make it go down a little bit, Charlie, please? Okay, there we go. Thank you. So this is a statement of the detailed estimates of all proposed expenditures for each fund, including a statement of all salaries paid to city officials, itemized for each department and activity by objects of expenditures, showing in parallel columns the expenditures for the preceding year, the appropriation and expenditures for the current year, and the recommendations of the city manager as to the appropriations to be made for the ensuing year, including an appropriation for contingencies and showing the increases or decreases in the recommended appropriations over the expenditures for the current year. Expenditures for the current year shall be computed as the actual expenditures to April 1st, plus the estimated expenditures for April, May, and June. So basically, it's pretty much set up the same way as the revenues. Yes, it's a lot. So I guess the main difference in here, one of the things that we're changing with benefits is the defined contribution. Our current practice is to make an annual contribution one time a year in January into Nationwide or Equitable, but then it's one time a year. And we want to start doing it every pay. So it's a little bit more expensive in next fiscal year because, so right now, the payment that we made in January was actually for calendar year 21. So we're paid through December 31st, 21. So now we have from January 1st, 22 to June 30, 22 that we have to make the employee whole on. So we're going to lump sum pay that in July, and then starting in July, it's going to be caught up every single pay. And the funds will be sent to Nationwide or Equitable, and they'll be invested. So we'll be hitting the highs and the lows instead of just one time a year. And I did do research that it does benefit the employee. Yeah, so just an extra benefit. Anything else you can think of really with expenditures that we changed? Yeah, okay. Oop. Okay, can you move that second page there, Charlie? There we go. This is the one of the things that I'm required to present, and it's the statement of salaries for city officials for fiscal year 23. As you know, the salaries for the mayor pro tem, and the 3 council members has been the same for the last 3 calendar years. We're in the 3rd one, I think. The city manager's salary include, oh, let me back up. So the salary structure for admin and salaried employees includes a 2.25% increase. So the city manager's salary includes a 2.25% increase. The clerk, treasurer, finance director, and the city engineer, we're both on the same pay grade, and we're both on the same step. So there's a 7-step pay scale, and Steve and I are going to step 6. So our increase looks bigger than the 2 1/4. I mean, it is because of the steps. That it's just getting back up to where those positions should be once they top out on the salary scale. So he and I are on the same, so it includes a step plus the 2 1/4%. The city attorney's salary includes a 2 1/4% increase. The 2 chiefs are also at the same amount because they're both at the top of the scale. So their salaries include 2.25%. The planning and development director is an additional step and the 2 1/4%. And then the city building official is a contract. I can't remember exactly that amount.
$2,500 a month.
There we go. Any questions on the salaries? So the clerical and fire union contracts are being negotiated, and the police and DPW, those increases are in their contracts. Can you zoom that, Charlie? Hard to read. Thank you. So this is a statement of the bonded and other indebtedness of the city, showing the amount required in the ensuing fiscal year for the retirement of principal on the debt, for interest, and for a sinking fund for term bonds if such a fund is required. So this is a snapshot of what we have left in debt. On the left side, we have the state revolving loan fund, which is paid out of the sewer fund. And we have 8 years left on that bond, or on that, I think it's a loan. I don't think it's a bond, is it? It's a loan, yeah. Principal is 1.4 million. Below that, on the left side are the SRF and DWRF ineligible expenses. There's 6 years left on that for a total of 400,000. And that is split evenly between the sewer and water funds. Over on the right side, we have the building authority, which was for the construction of the DPW building. And we have 8 years left on that, 860,000 in principal debt. And then below that is the drinking water revolving fund. And there is 8 years left on that one, about 1.3 million. If you could scroll a little bit, there's a little box at the bottom. So at the beginning of fiscal year 23, the water and sewer funds have 3.1 million of debt. The DPW building has 860,000, combined is 3.9 million. In fiscal year 22, we paid $460,000 in principal debt, and we'll do the same in 23. Any questions on that slide? It's nice to see every year, a year falling off of that. The next slide is a statement of outstanding delinquent taxes and special assessments which have been levied during the current and preceding fiscal years of the city, and an estimate of the amount thereof which may reasonably be expected to be collected or realized upon during the next fiscal year of the city. So this report was printed on April 20th, and since then we've collected on 5 parcels, 1 parcel for 2020 tax year and 4 on 2021. So this shows 70 parcels, but really we have 65 left to collect on. So at the time of this report, we had $688,503 of base tax that was uncollected for all the entities. Of that amount, I anticipate that we're going to strike $2,897. The 2015 tax year, I said last year in my presentation that we were going to write that off, and then I went to go and do it and found out there's a $175 fee. So I decided to hold off and wait until this year to strike. In fiscal year, what does this say? Delinquent taxes expected to be collected in fiscal year 23 for all entities. So of that 688,000, I expect that 116,629 will be collected. And of that, $57,273 is the city's share. And then $568,984 is expected to be collected after fiscal year 23. There's currently, well, through April 30th, the amount of property tax admin fee that is still due is $3,136. And if you recall, we started collecting that in tax year 19. So all of that will come back to the city once it's paid. The 3% penalty that is owed is $20,655. And again, that comes back to the city. The interest that is owed is $261,460, and we get just a share of that. That is the interest that is for all entities. So the total due was $973,755, but now I ran the report today and it's up to $978,613 because on May 1st, additional interest gets added. So even though we took in payment on 5 parcels, it still went up. Any questions on that one? No? Okay, I think I only have one left. One slide. Yes. Last one is the organization funding. We have $20,000 to the Humane Society, $40,000 Target Alpena, $5,000 to Thunder Bay Arts Council. To the Wildlife Sanctuary River Center, we have $5,000, $1,400 for miscellaneous projects for the sanctuary, $8,000 for Hunt, and $20,000 to the Park Family Foundation for a total of $99,400 in organization funding.
How many more years are left on the Park Foundation? You know, I mean, I didn't mean to hate asking a question like that. I mean, it's quite some time, do you think? Wasn't it initially like 20 years? I think it was initially 20 years, so I could probably do the math.
I think we're about halfway. Yeah.
I was just curious.
So that was a lot of information.
No, it was great.
It was great.
It's great.
Glad you think so.
It was really. It really.
Okay.
I'm not just no. It was
Okay, good.
understandable. It's amazing what you guys can.
All the charts and stuff that you've done and every one of your presentations have been spot on as far as easy to follow, and information is fantastic.
Good. So this year in the draft budget, we changed our pie charts a little bit. Those used to be presented by department, but now it's by function. So that was a change there.
Okay.
If you look through the capital that we actually made it in the budget. So the CIP was over 8 million and the capital that is actually in the budget is over 9 million. And a lot of that is because of projects that were carried forward, shuffled around, and then ARPA projects. So that's significant. That's a lot. There was, in the whole budgeting process, there was only 2 projects that I cut. One of them was the wayfinding signage at the Marina for $10,000. Not really that big of a, if you want, we could bring that back, I guess. And then what was the other project? The City Hall parking lot for $150,000.
Yeah.
But we have the Carter Street one in finally.
Been on there a while. So that's fantastic. It's like, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of construction and projects happening this year, which it's nice to see because when Matt and I first started, we didn't have a lot going on. There just wasn't a lot of funds at that time, you know, and so it's really nice to see all that. It's just having the construction companies capable of accomplishing all of the stuff that we have in there as well. So, you know, I do really, you know, to echo the mayor's statement, I really do appreciate the efforts from all departments. You know, what's nice is every year when we see this, the heads of all of those departments they're so well managed that by the end of our fiscal year, we're usually below our budget. And I know that's from a lot of hard work of you guys every year. So I really appreciate that. And it's nice. I also learned too that if you're going to do this job, you're not doing it for the money. You know, it's a love of your community up here. So
Yeah. We're very fortunate to be in the position that we are in with such a high fund balance. In speaking to other treasurers at the training last week, that's not the case for everybody, but I think we did some really good things along the way, and we were conservative in the uncertain times, and now we're sitting in a good position.
We really tried to leverage a lot of grant funding over the past couple of years, and that's thanks to the efforts of staff.
Excellent. So you want to receipt and file on this, and then final will be at our next meeting. Is that your anticipation?
Well, so the next meeting on the 16th, we will have a public hearing. And I guess if there's no public comment, we could approve it. But if there is public comment, I think those are things that we need to take into consideration and think about. So I think last year or last couple of years, we've actually approved it at the first meeting in June, instead to allow time to process any public comments.
It's fine. And people can find this draft where?
It's on our website.
Is it right on the front page, one of the?
Is it, Steve?
Buried in the bottom.
If it's not there.
I think it's under transparency, isn't it?
Transparency, we put it on clerk's for treasure page.
Yeah,
And then, but
I'll take a look tomorrow.
if presented tonight, you could certainly put it on that first news.
On the, yeah. Mhm. If there's room on there, that would probably be best. And then just,
Following or leading up to the public hearing.
yeah, throw out a social media description of where people can find it so we can generate as much interest as possible.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll entertain a motion to do it. We need to do we even receive and file that or not really?
Oh, we usually receive and file.
Do we? All right. I'll do that.
So moved.
Or
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell?
yes.
Councilman Nowak?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak?
Yes.
Mayor Walagora? Motion carried.
thank you. Next up is the Enterprise Leasing Program Presentation and Agreement Authorization. Rachel is going to present that.
Hard to follow.
All that information.
Okay, so I didn't get any training on this new technology here yet, but
Put me around, I'll Charlie can do it.
oh, even better. Okay. All right, so I believe Jamie Fassbender from Enterprise Fleet Management is online. Oh, I see him.
Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yes, thank you. So he'll be able to answer any questions that I cannot. All right, so we met, I believe it was in February, had our initial meeting with staff, and we had a large group. I wanted to make sure that we brought everyone along with the same information on this. So we've been toiling over this for 2 to 3 months and just trying to, answer all the questions that we could think of. All right, so, but I wanted to lay out, Charlie, could you go to the presentation, please? And the second slide, please. I know just as you got that one, perfect. All right, so I wanted to establish some goals for our fleet management. Provide vehicles that are safe and have current safety features. Provide vehicles that are appropriate for the job task. Provide vehicles that improve the workplace environment. Provide vehicles that assist with a professional image for the city. Provide vehicles that require less maintenance and better fuel economy. And replace those vehicles before the end of their life, which a lot of our vehicles you will see are at that point. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's a little hard to see the one on the left, but that's really just categories of where, or number of types of vehicles. And so we have 58% of the light duty fleet is currently 10 years or older. The average age of the fleet is 10.6, or vehicles in the fleet is 10.6 years. And 21 plus years is the time it would take at our current acquisition rate to actually cycle through that fleet. And so next slide, please. I wanted to give you a little sampling of our fleet. You know, we do have some vehicles that are still okay, but you know, the ones that I'm showing are some that we may focus on. First, our public safety Ford Escapes. We definitely, those are on the list, and you know, talking with Andy and Rob, they're kind of on their last legs. So we have some of the better features there. Also, just a look at, next slide, please. DPW vehicles. Next slide, please. Our building department. And so I also want to make sure, as I put in the, maybe it's in a later slide, but we want to make sure that form fits function. So in this case, we might be looking at a different type of vehicle because Steve Hall, our building inspector, is often you know, out in the winter months and has trouble getting down some of the alleys and such. Next slide, please. And on the left there is one of our old police cruisers, and we have used those right up to the end of their life. So they've gotten a lot of good use. And we have an engineering van that I had not seen before. And I'm not sure if the mileage is really what we indicated, but it still has pretty low mileage, but something that, you know, maybe we would sell because it's really not utilized. All right, next slide, please.
I'll use that van for elections for transport.
Oh, do you? Okay, all right, so maybe we still want the van, but yeah. All right. Okay, no problem. Okay, so what we're proposing is a partnership with Enterprise, and we want to leverage an open-ended lease to maximize cash flow opportunities and recognize our equity, streamline our fleet management, replace vehicles on a planned cycle, improve safety with newer vehicles and up-to-date safety technology, increase our fuel efficiency, provide a more sustainable and predictable budget in moving forward, review, they also provide assistance in reviewing our program on an annual basis, so we can look at resale, fuel prices, etc. Provide account management through a dedicated local account team, which Jamie would be part of, proactively manage and develop our fleet. And we also have access to Enterprise's website, and it provides vehicle tracking, reporting, and metrics. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a bit hard to see, but I wanted to give you an idea of what our replacement schedule could look like. We do have a lot of factors that play into, you know, what we would get replaced, such as availability. You know, we have proposed a lot in 2022 because we have a lot of older vehicles. And this is not a schedule that we are bound to. This is a guideline, a plan. So when we get to the point where we will actually enter into a lease, we're going to work with the with city staff and see if this is the right vehicle. And a lot of it is based upon availability too. All right, next slide, please. And Jamie, I'm going to kick this over to you to explain what's on this slide.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. And thank you, council members, for allowing us to be a part of this meeting. And we are certainly looking forward to the opportunity to partnering with your great city and helping you really navigate this this kind of environment that we find ourselves in with vehicles as they are today, and with all the challenges in the market with supply chain and whatnot. But as Rachel said earlier, we've been working very diligently for several months now, evaluating your fleet and coming up with really some great areas to get started. And as Rachel mentioned, in this year, there's a larger package of vehicles that really meet one of two metrics, either 10 years in age or 100,000 miles on the vehicle. And due to that, in that previous slide, that kind of targeted about 23 vehicles that really would be primed for replacement in this year. And what this slide represents essentially is a schedule of what it would look like from a budgeting standpoint to go out and replace these vehicles in the initial year. And I think what's really key on this slide is if you were to think about the cost to go out and replace 23 vehicles by themselves, you'd be looking at about $1 million to go out in your kind of previous way of doing this to replace vehicles, which compared to your previous kind of status quo of replacing vehicles at a pace of about 2 to 3 vehicles a year really isn't sustainable or viable. What this plan does, it allows you to take that cost at about 1/5 of the cost, actually a little bit lower than that, and create a sustainable budget that you can move forward. So in this would profile out every vehicle that we've sort of identified as replacements for the vehicles on the previous slide that would fall under this year. And then it essentially just lays out what that menu would look like from a budgeting standpoint for each vehicle class, the quantity in that, some estimated annual mileage, the monthly essentially cost of that, and then ultimately what that total budget would look like. So in this scenario, we're looking at about 23 vehicles with a repeatable cost of about $172,000 with a one-time upfront aftermarket investment for some of the aftermarket equipment, plows, bed equipment for some of the pickup trucks, essentially for a first year cost of about $208,000. Within a recurring cost for those 23 vehicles at about $172,000 per year. Now, the one caveat to this, and Rachel, if she were to kind of go to the next slide, when we kind of look at the full effect of this program, is that our intention is to stay very involved and really kind of a joint at the hip with the city management to make sure that we're really targeting vehicles for the proper replacement cycle. And Rachel had kind of touched on it earlier, that we want to actually take the fleet from an average cycle of that kind of that 10.6 to 13 year range down to about a 3.5 year cycle. And we do that by the fact that we can deliver vehicles at the state bid pricing or the Michigan My Deal pricing, but then we can go out and make recommendations for remarketing those anywhere from 1 to 5 years over the next kind of 5 years, and then take that equity and generate equity from resale and reinvestment into the program to drive down costs across our book of business. And right now we're working with really approaching about 70 different municipalities, state, county agencies, basically county governments, and then also similar to your organization, city governments as well, and helping them to run their fleets at a very low cost due to the continual reinvestment of resale from targeting the right time to move on to these vehicles. Right. So in this proposal that we've been working on, we've targeted about over the next 10 years, a little over $800,000 in capital savings or cash flow savings that would go back to the fleet that could fund either further vehicles within the fleet or other areas within the city. This would generate a 72% reduction in the current maintenance and repair costs, 24% reduction in the estimated fuel expenditures on the fleet by, again, reintroducing hybrid engines and more fuel efficient vehicles that are going to provide better fuel economy. One thing that was really key that Rachel talked about is the ability to kind of work with you and really target the proper vehicle for each individual use, and also targeting the resale in the vehicles kind of at the front end, so that when there's an opportunity to put a vehicle that's going to generate higher resale, we kind of take that into account. And then a year or 2 years down the road, you get the benefit of that high resale. So we're really targeting the correct vehicles for the correct use. So ultimately, as Rachel said, this plan is not set in stone. It's something that we evaluate every year. But at the same time, it's very flexible to move into the program, and at the same time, it's very flexible to exit the program should the city seek a different solution down the road.
Thank you, Jamie. So there's a conservative estimate of $808,240 over the next 10 years. Again, these are just estimates. We don't actually know what it's going to be until we get into the program, but we just wanted to provide some figures for you to consider. Next slide, please, Charlie. And then I just wanted to highlight some of the communities that are new in the program. Alpena County just joined in, and then some of the others. Next slide, please. And then any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could go back 2 slides. So these, and I understand that we're not going to have hardcore numbers because we're not doing it yet, but these numbers that are being provided on this slide,
Back another one, or these? Okay, yeah.
that one's fine for right now. Are they based on City of Alpena data, or are they based on a global number from the experience of the rental company? And I ask that because I don't know, when you say a 72% reduction in repair and maintenance costs, is that based on the repair and maintenance that we historically provide for our vehicles? And that's based on the fact that they're older than 5 years old? So, because these vehicles will have 60 months. I saw 60 months on a lot of them. So in the 5 years that we're leasing these, you're going to maintain all the maintenance costs. So is that 72% reduction based on vehicles that the city has that are older than 5 years? No,
So
am I doing the right kind of math?
No, well, and Jamie and I talked a little bit about that, so I'll let him answer.
okay, perfect. I know totally where you're coming from on the question. So what that number represents is if we were to continue on today without enterprise involved and you continued on your 2 vehicle replacement plan, when we did this initial evaluation with Rachel and her team, taking what you're currently spending today and comparing that to what it would look like when you implement new vehicles into your fleet, that really giving the annual mileage patterns, you're mostly doing oil changes, tire rotations, very, very basic maintenance on this. So you're going to see a massive reduction in costs compared to when you look at the vehicles that were on the slides earlier that are 10 plus years in age, that kind of have recurring larger maintenance expenses. That's where that reduction comes into play. And then on the fuel side, again, we're able to know what these vehicles are likely generating from a fuel economy standpoint. And then given the cost of current fuel, taking into effect, again, when we implement new vehicles, you're going to have higher fuel economy with new engines. For example, hybrid engines are very popular in the municipal sector right now because you do have a lot of idle time and there's ways to really reduce costs there. So that kind of takes on those 2. With respect to the resale, Enterprise Holdings, so our entire company sells a little over 1 million vehicles per year, and those are selling our enterprise rental car vehicles, and they're also selling our enterprise fleet management client vehicles. So when we evaluate your current costs, your current fleet today, we're very good at kind of projecting out what those are going to sell for in the vehicles in the fleet today, but we also know with a very specific degree of certainty of what the future vehicles will sell for. So if we put a vehicle in the program today, we already know what it's going to sell for in 12, 24, 36 months. So we're taking all that into account when we're basing in the fact that we're going to run these vehicles for a certain amount of time. Then we're going to make a recommendation to go out and replace it. When that vehicle is replaced and it generates a high resale number, those funds then come back to the city to either be a form of a rolled gain into the next vehicle or a credit back to your general fund, or however Rachel chooses to account for those vehicles. Most of our clients will just continue to reinvest those vehicles, and they get to a point where their program now runs at essentially a negative cost for the fleet, which would actually be a surplus because they're generating so much in revenue from resale that their cost of their fleet program essentially is zero, and they're left over with a surplus in funds. So all that goes back to our relationship with their city managers and executives, helping them to really determine the best time to sell vehicles, given what type of aftermarket equipment are on them, and when's the best time to turn those out. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that kind of covered the three things you were kind of questioning or asking about.
Yeah, it does for the most part. I'd asked Rachel earlier about insurance because I've only got experience in the private sector leased for many years, and then got out of the lease programs because of mileage and damage. So that'll lead me into another question in a minute. But as far as the insurance part goes, the answer was that we can expect our insurance to be lower because the vehicles will be safer. But we really don't. When I looked over the years of the years of our vehicles, other than the van that no one drives, most of these vehicles that we have right now are in the generation of safe vehicles with airbags and things. So what do you mean by, just because a vehicle is newer doesn't mean it's going to be safer, unless, what do you mean by these vehicles will be safer? Therefore, our insurance will be less, because usually a brand new vehicle is going to be more expensive to insure than an older vehicle. Not talk about the person in it, talk about the vehicle itself, because I'm assuming we're going to insure the vehicle itself.
Right. And I mean, I don't expect it to be lower, but I think there won't be a significant increase.
In all fairness, you didn't say,
Yeah.
it said it would.
Right. And I mean, that's a generalization. And I asked Jamie what he's been seeing in other communities, basically. So he can, Jamie, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, we get this question quite often, and my response is always that, you know, again, we're not writing the insurance on the program. However, we have a lot of clients that kind of go through this question of, is it going to be more expensive? And every time that one of our clients has gone and kind of looked into it, what they've told us is that due to safety improvements, they are either seeing their costs stay the same or even kind of go down a little bit because, again, you made a comment earlier that vehicles haven't really improved that much in safety. But if you go back, and I have a little slide up on my screen, but in 2007, things like front and side crash tests were essentially embedded kind of all across vehicles, anti-lock brakes, airbags. In 2012, things like electronic stability control, lane departure warning. In 2017, excuse me, forward collision warning, blind spot warnings, offset crash test variables. In 2018, things like rear cameras are standard as of May of 2018. These are all things that continue to become safer on vehicles, where a lot of the vehicles in your fleet, if you really evaluate vehicles that are 2004, 2003, 1999, a lot of those vehicles actually don't have a lot of these safety, and I'd be willing to bet that the vehicles that are actually in your fleet probably don't have many of these features. So we do see that they become significantly safer when you implement new vehicles into the fleet. And then just with respect to the insurance, if there is any cost, I've not seen it yet where it has been enough to be a deterrence to move into this program. So that's kind of my general answer that I give, but certainly if you worked with your insurance agency, they'd be able to give you a more complete answer. But we've not seen it be a deterrent to moving into this program yet.
Okay. All right. That was a good answer. I appreciate it.
You did have another question. Did you want me to answer your question about the leasing part? You kind of mentioned that mileage. Nope. I'm in a meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, I saw you had mileages set up on some of them on one of the slides.
So while our program utilizes a type of a lease, it is not a lease like a dealership, like many of you might experience if you were to go out and get a lease on your own. It's not a retail. Essentially, it's a commercial finance that is treated like a lease for accounting purposes, but it has all the features of a finance. So when I talk about things like reinvesting resale, we implement essentially a finance structure. That vehicle is written down over a period of time. When we make a recommendation to go out and resell it, and we sell it at a very high value in the market, the city will actually get the difference of the resale less whatever the book value is in the fleet. So for example, the County of Newaygo just sold six pickup trucks that just were settled out last month, where they were in their fleet for 15 months. So going back to their 2020 GMC Sierra double cabs, similar to the vehicles that I had profiled out in your fleet. They were delivered to the county at a price of about $27,000 each, and they were driven for 15 months. We then went out and sold them on the market for an average of $38,000 a piece. Now, over that 15 months, they paid that vehicle down to $22,000, and then we wrote them a check back of the 38,000 less that 22. So on average, they generated $14,000 back in resale, which funded what they spent to finance that vehicle, and then left them with a surplus of about $7,000 to $8,000 per vehicle. So over the 6 vehicles, they had a surplus of $45,000 net after basically funding those vehicles for 15 months. So that's kind of how that lease program works. Again, it's a commercial management style of funding. It's not a retail program like you might be familiar with. So mileage, things like that really don't come into play. They only come into play as we're kind of evaluating resale terms and kind of when the best time to sell them. And that would also go with the wear and tear as well. So
Okay, so
no penalties.
isn't, so when I lease a vehicle and something backs into me.
Correct.
So when I turn that vehicle in, I get charged to fix that by the leasing company, but you don't. You're saying that just comes off of what it's worth when you sell it.
At a very simple way to explain it, that's 100% correct. So we talked about this earlier today, and the very simple answer is if someone backs into your vehicle, the kind of general rule of thumb would be take a picture of it and send it to your account team and have them kind of evaluate it, and we'll make a recommendation if it makes sense to make the repair or not. In most cases, if it's a little dent or a small scratch, we're going to say don't worry about it, because the person that's going to buy that vehicle on the back end, they're not going to be worried about that. And again, you're not going to be charged on an incremental basis for things like that. It's going to be what that actual value is. So if someone takes out the complete rear quarter panel of a pickup truck, then sure, we probably want to replace that. But minor dents and dings are really not going to impact the resale of these vehicles, and the mileage. You won't drive enough miles on most of these vehicles for it to be any kind of a detriment. But that'll all be taken into account at the beginning of every vehicle as we enter it into the program. So you'll never be surprised on the back end, because we are so involved with maintaining kind of how these vehicles are performing and where they're at in their life.
I think the question I would have then, and I appreciate you giving an example of current market, and we all can agree that the current market for vehicles is kind of a blip. Mm-hmm. Historically, if we have the vehicle, like you said, valued at $22,000, but the value of that vehicle then is at $15,000, the other balance of $7,000, is that something that we pay?
So in that scenario, if you were actually selling it, then that would be essentially a true up. The reality is, though, we wouldn't be making a recommendation to sell a vehicle that was essentially in a negative equity position. So for that scenario to play out, it would have to be something pretty extreme, maybe something where it was like an accident and you chose not to repair the vehicle and you just wanted to salvage it. In most cases, we're going to set up the finance to match the actual usage on the vehicle. And again, when you take into account our ability to sell vehicles and really understand what that resale market, this program was a win before the pandemic increase in resale. Maybe not as high of a win, but we were still delivering vehicles and then selling them for more than what our clients essentially delivered them at. Just now that's like double. So the program was a win pre-pandemic. And we're also seeing that as vehicle prices increase, that the resale is going to follow that. So it should always stay in that positive equity position as the way that we set these vehicles up, given the fact that as a municipality, you tend to have incentives that are significantly higher than the general population. So that really reduces your costs out the door. It doesn't really work like it does if a private individual buys a vehicle and gets a small incentive, where as a municipality, you deliver a truck and you get a $10,000 incentive. That really reduces that burden on the front end, and it allows you to have a lot of play for resale on the backside. So, but everything is always looked at the beginning when a vehicle enters into a schedule with you.
Okay.
Regarding the lease agreement, what if, just say, for example, we leased a vehicle and had aftermarket parts added to that, and then 2 months later said, wait, this isn't meeting our needs, or we need to have a different type of vehicle, what happens then?
Well, if it's a scenario where you absolutely can't use the vehicle, then we would simply order a replacement. And when the new vehicle comes in, we would then just remarket the vehicle that you no longer need. The reality is right now, there's not many vehicles that are out there that we can't find a home for. And again, with the volume of vehicles that we're able to move from a remarketing standpoint, we are able to, in fact, we have several clients right now just kind of in a separate scenario. So some of our privately held companies that we work with, or more commercial companies that have had vehicles on order, for example, or they get them delivered and they run for a few months, but due to some of the challenges in the economy, have to close their own doors. We're simply able to go out and remarket those vehicles and then credit the funds back. I think in the real kind of question in the municipal space is, what do we do if a year or 2 years into this, it's not working or we just don't like it? Well, the benefit is you haven't spent as much money as you normally would have in your kind of previous replacement plan. You could actually sell your entire fleet with us and we would credit you back a large check for the vehicles, because they're all going to sell for more than what you owe on them, unless one vehicle is, drastically higher mileage for some reason. But that's why we take a very conservative approach to this, because we want to make sure that you're always in a comfortable, equitable position in your fleet. And we set up our finance terms to sort of mirror that. That way, if in 6 months you need to get out of a vehicle, you can simply do that. We remarket it and make the vehicle go away and credit you back the difference. So it's very flexible and very safe from that standpoint. And that's why it's grown so much in your industry over the last 10 years. It's just the fact that it's a very successful program, and it's also very flexible for our council members and city managers and county administrators that we work with.
I have a question. Is there a fee for you to sell these vehicles?
Yes, there is. There's a small fee that's taken out of the resale price of the vehicle. It's $425. So if a vehicle sells for $20,000 on the resale market, that $425 comes off the top of the sale price. And so it's not a percentage. We're not actually generating any kind of profit when we sell it, but our professionals who are selling them, they are essentially paid by enterprise based on commanding the highest resale that they possibly can. So it's to their incentive, because they're selling your vehicles right with all the rental car vehicles that we sell on the rental side of our business. And so you have experts that are essentially selling these vehicles and getting the highest possible resale on the market for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, in the term, it's further down. It's in the next one down. That's like the lease contract.
Second agreement.
You keep going to the second agreement. There's terms and conditions, and it looks like it's really small, but it looks like a $550 fee.
So to sell your current city vehicles that are not enterprise, it's $550. So there's a small difference.
Oh, that's
between,
yeah.
Okay. So if we were to sell your current vehicles, there's a slightly higher cost for that, but the enterprise vehicles is $425. So I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Even the van.
Yeah, even the van. I got it.
Even the van. But I will say we take.
I don't know if that's a misprint or what. The 2000.
104,000.
I think it's got 102,000.
I think it was a typo. Yeah.
1,000 miles on a 1997 van. I'll take it.
I don't think we're really planning on getting rid of that one, since we don't put a lot of miles on it. We're just gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are the types of decisions we could make when we talk about it. Yeah.
Vehicles. I mean, I just or which ones to sell. The thing about the sell agreement, I don't know if we're going to kind of work our way into that. Okay, so it kind of goes hand in hand. The issue that I have a little bit, I think it's great. I mean, the program seems just fantastic for vehicles like Rob and Andy's, and the couple of fleet vehicles we have. And I'm just naming off names because it's easier for me, because I don't know what the vehicles are. But Max, little truck that he drives around, things like that, engineering vehicles, I get that. I just want you guys to be very cautious as far as what DPW and hard-working trucks we have of hard-working individuals in them, to whether that's going to be an issue with them as far as repair and maintenance and things like that, or can we just keep the ones that we've got alive? And you guys will figure that out. As far as selling the vehicles that these are leases are replacing them, is that I guess I'm looking at Bill because when you sell city property, there's stipulations. So I'm assuming that since Enterprise is doing this for other municipalities, then it's okay for us to give them to sell rather than us having to bid them out or sell them on any kind of this is okay
So,
for us to just turn over city property. Turning over city property for someone to sell, and we may not make any money off of it at all, where we could just put them on Facebook and put a minimum on them.
And we could certainly choose to go down that path and sell those vehicles ourselves. It's just an option. And I think this may be a better option for the enterprise leased vehicles.
The leased vehicle.
I don't think it requires us to do that.
No.
No,
Okay.
we have clients that do both. Certainly with the very old vehicles that are in the fleet, the ones that are way north of 10 years, we're not great at selling a vehicle that's 15 years old with 200,000 miles. Those, if we looked at our stats kind of company wide, 85% of our vehicles are sold direct channel to independent dealerships and franchise dealers. So basically dealerships that sell vehicles back to the general population. That 15% are those really, really old vehicles that our clients ask us to kind of tow, and a lot of those will go to the auction. So we always recommend, because we'll tell Rachel what we could think, what we're pretty confident we can sell a vehicle for before we actually pick it up, or before they tell us, you know what, you can do better than us. So I always say, if you can sell one of those older vehicles locally, go ahead and do that. But I promise you the enterprise vehicles, we are going to sell for a much higher value than you would get running them through a local auction or something like that. And all those costs are kind of predetermined, where we can tell Rachel and her team, this vehicle will sell for this amount of dollars at this time when we go out to market, and we make recommendations based on kind of time of year and things like that. So that'll get massaged every single year as to kind of the best time to do that. And then back to your other comments as far as heavy use DPW trucks, when we talked about this kind of over the conversations for the last couple of months, the one thing you have to keep in mind, the vehicles right now, what they look really in poor shape with the rust and kind of all that, but that's because they're 10 plus years old and they've had 10 winters and all these different kind of factors that play into that. We are going to be targeting a 1 to 5 year replacement plan, depending on the type of vehicle and the type of aftermarket that is in that. So if it's a 1-ton cabin chassis with a dump bed, that's probably going to be a 5-year term. If it's a 3/4 ton with a snow plow, it could be a 3 to a 5-year term. The lighter vehicles, like you mentioned, that don't have a lot of that, those would be shorter, but all that is taken into account ahead of time. And we already have a plan to evaluate that vehicle before we make that decision to turn it out with that recommendation to Rachel. And she always is the one with your council members to kind of enact the budget every year. And we will rebuild this and reforecast it every single year to make sure that you're making the absolute best decisions. And then ultimately it's upon your team members there to approve or determine maybe not to do part of it. So all of that is taken into account, and we have tens of thousands of commercial DPW trucks on the road all across the United States using the same type of applications that you have today. So it's very, very common and kind of basically right in our bread and butter of the type of vehicles that we operate.
Okay.
I was going to get to the one question here. What we're looking at predominantly is the DPW vehicles. What about our police cars?
Yep, those are on the list.
Police cars, how much does it cost to upmarket the police cars with the radios and the light bars and the brush bars and all the other things that don't normally come with the vehicle.
I'd have to defer to Lieutenant Hamp for that.
Yeah, you're probably around 10 to 11 grand, but a lot of that equipment, depending on the model of the vehicle, is going to transfer from one vehicle to the next. But Jamie can cover that better than I can probably, but you're still going to have the labor costs to switch the equipment from one vehicle.
Yeah.
The reason I was asking that is because when we sit here and look at the number of years on average, 5, maybe some less, some more, is that sufficient to cover the cost of that replacing, say, every 5 years? And you're also looking at a lot higher mileage every year on the things like this. So those kind of things, yeah, it'd really be kind of interesting to see what those kind of numbers come in.
Right.
Because that's different than your DPW vehicles that aren't going to put that kind of wear and tear on.
Nope, that's a great question and a great comment, and all of that's already invested in the kind of the analysis that we've done over the last several months. Again, I would say a very high majority of our municipal clients we are managing a lot or all of their pursuit rated vehicles. And you're right, the reason it's 3.5 years is because we have a lot of vehicles that are at that 5-6 year window. And a lot of those are the heavy DPW with the high aftermarket, and as well as the pursuit rated vehicles. We really target about 100,000 miles cycle on those. And as Lieutenant Hamp said, when it makes sense, we transfer some of that expensive equipment, and the cost to transfer it is minimal compared to the cost of purchasing new. But the other factor is that we are also going out and remarketing that vehicle for $10,000 to $20,000, and so you're taking that money and then you're rolling that capital into the next vehicle, and that's reducing the cost. Because again, Lieutenant Hamp could talk about the maintenance costs and that you really start to incur from having thousands of hours of idle time more on an engine at 100,000 miles versus the actual mileage or the usage on it, where maintenance really starts to become a problem. We want to get out of it before you're doing that, and we want to resell that vehicle in a market that's going to go be either a smaller village or kind of whatever. When you see those old patrol vehicles on the road, it goes to that sort of a market. But we keep your officers in efficient, well-maintained, safe. So,
right.
Again, it's completely your choice, and you're not making that decision to turn that vehicle out until about 5 years, anyways.
Right. And when you go back to our existing police interceptors, you have, the lowest mileage one on there is 76,482 miles. With the high 107,000 plus. So, okay. Good, great questions. Thank you.
Okay, so.
Oh.
I don't recall that during the course of the discussion, do we have to finance, or can we purchase it outright through enterprise?
So you can self-fund the vehicle through Ottawa County, for example, will self-fund the entire vehicle. They leave it on our books for $1, so we manage the title for them. And then when we go to resell it, it's a much smoother transition. The reason most of our clients like to use the financing option is really just due to cash flow, that they are recapturing nearly 100% of those costs when we're remarketing the vehicles. But it just, from a cash flow standpoint, again, instead of replacing all 23 vehicles and spending $1 million this year, you're doing it for 1/5 of the cost, and it allows you to keep your budgets more in line with what you've been doing previously, really totally kind of over the fleet. So it's an either or. You can certainly self-fund the vehicle if you didn't want to incur any kind of a finance charge, but ultimately that funding mechanism tends to work in a lot of our clients' favor.
So we could technically do both under this plan or under this agreement?
You could do either or. You just obviously would have a much higher outlay of capital when you self-fund the vehicle. So if it's if it's a $30,000 pickup truck, you write us a check for $29,999 and we leave it on the books for $1. And essentially we would manage the title, and then when we go out and sell it and we sell it for, $30,000, we write you a check back for $30,000. So that's what Ottawa County does. And just most of our clients love that kind of that cash flow mechanism because when they compare it to what they've been previously doing, it allows them to get a larger package of vehicles. It allows them to reduce their maintenance, reduce their fuel, and then they target vehicles within that fleet to cycle them out earlier and capitalize on the resale. So ultimately, it's an either or discussion really to move forward with that.
Okay. I just don't want to get too deep in the weeds because you guys are going to deal with all of that later. What are you asking for us?
Charlie, could you go back to my initial memo? I didn't bring a copy up here.
We're not authorizing any specific vehicles. We're not authorizing how specifically Anna might want to pay for them.
I'm asking you to approve the Enterprise Fleet Management Master Equity Lease Agreement and the Enterprise Fleet Management Agreement to sell customer vehicles and authorize me to sign the agreements.
Jamie, we're not required to replace any vehicles in any particular year, correct?
No. Nope. That's the flexible nature of it. Again, we are partnering with you and we're assigning a full team of professionals that will be working with Rachel and her staff every year. We will be making recommendations based on current market factors, but you could certainly choose to not approve the full plan or choose to extend vehicles every single year. So ultimately it's your decisions. Our job is to make the best kind of consulting and recommendations that we are seeing across our very broad book of business and our experience in resale and what we're generating that, and then just evaluating new vehicles as they come in and essentially doing all the legwork and then giving you options and decisions to make based on the best direction for the city.
And there's no minimum amount of vehicles?
I'm assuming they want us to do at least one, but no, I'm thinking like we'll have to see what's available this year, but I don't think there's a minimum unless I'm missing something, Jamie.
No, there's not a minimum. Generally, again, we in that plan that we you have 23 vehicles that are either 10 years in age or 100,000 miles that would be prime to replace. But certainly if you wanted to start with a smaller package or key in on a couple different segments, you could certainly do that. The one thing I will say is that we're in a vehicle market where it's very difficult to get them. So when model years open, we call them order banks with the manufacturers. And we can work with any manufacturer. We didn't talk about that, but we certainly can. When things like the Silverado opens up later this month for half tons and heavy duty pickup trucks, that's in previous years, it might be open for 8 to 10 months throughout the course of the model year, where now we're finding ourselves where we're expecting it to be open for maybe, if we're lucky, 1 to 2 months. And then that's going to close and you're going to find yourself in a scenario where dealerships just do not have product or product that was ordered with those correct incentives sitting on their lots. So most of our clients that are municipal and private are already kind of making their budgets and then they're placing their orders to make sure that they can actually just get the product. And then if there's a scenario where it's like, we don't need a vehicle, we're able to actually remarket them right now, but that's not happening very often. So we're able to make vehicles disappear if they're not needed in a matter of hours today. But that's the recommendation. We would certainly make a recommendation to Rachel to target the vehicles of most importance and try to move those when those model years open.
Okay.
Thank you.
A lot more comfortable than I was 15 minutes ago.
Well, and thank you, Jamie, for your thorough answers. And again, great questions.
Did it. Bill might want to look into that whole selling thing.
Right. Absolutely.
But so again, I'm sorry, what is it?
We're asking for basically approval of both of those agreements that you have in the packet and to authorize me to sign the agreements.
To motion.
Do you separate motions? Yeah.
And that's of course, once you've determined what vehicles you're,
Right. And basically those will be, I don't know if you would say an addendum, but those will become an, attachment to the lease agreements. And so they'll run the course of the lease. And I know I answered this question earlier, but so this agreement can be terminated in writing anytime we choose, but we would still be obligated to the leases.
right.
Right, the ones we already have.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, the ones that we already have executed.
Okay, gotcha. Should we, before we do make a motion, Bill, is there concern about that, about the selling agreement, that we should just bring that back, give you some time to, well, because you can enter into the agreement and we could just never execute it.
Right.
Okay. Let's just do that so we don't back, but I wouldn't execute anything without.
And I can provide an update later. Yeah.
Be great. I think that would be great.
I won't sell the van.
Okay.
I want to buy the van.
Everybody wants the van. It's going to be a bidding.
I do not want the van.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted again.
Okay, so I will move that we allow Rachel to sign the agreement for the Enterprise Fleet Management Master Equity Lease Agreement.
Support.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilman Noah,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes. Now I will move that city manager to sign the Enterprise Fleet Management Agreement to sell vehicles.
Or
Councilman Noah,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you again, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, council member.
All right. Next up on the agenda is the second reading of ordinance 22-473, which amends the city of Alpena zoning map. Bill, is that?
Consistent with council policy, this would not be read again. Just briefly, this is the property located at 1102 Ford Avenue, which would be rezoned from R2 to RT to allow it to operate as a duplex. It was a duplex before. It was sold as a duplex. It was bought as a duplex. This gives them legal authority to do that now. But they've been doing that for several years anyways, so.
Okay.
I move we approve ordinance 22-473.
Second.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up is the second reading of ordinance 22-474, which amends the city of Alpena zoning ordinance, Article 3, general provisions, Article 4, signs, Article 5, zoning districts, and Article 7, supplemental development regulations.
This basically amends the zoning ordinance districts, specifically relating to accommodation and food services and what is permitted by right and what's permitted by special use in those districts. It also, you may recall, you separately approved a couple of meetings back the outdoor seating language and how that can be approved, and that's under number 8, sidewalk encroachments. So that's essentially what this one is.
I move we approve ordinance 22-474.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Bill and Montiel. Next up is the first reading of ordinance 22-475, amendment to the new flood insurance map.
This is an ordinance of the city of Alpena, Michigan, amending chapter 14, buildings and building regulations, article 11, floodplain management, section 14-215, designation of regulated flood prone hazard areas. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Alpena, State of Michigan as follows. Section 14-215, designation of regulated flood-prone hazard areas will now read: the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, flood insurance study, FIS, entitled Alpena County, Michigan, all jurisdictions effective June 1st, 2022, and the flood insurance rate maps with panel numbers as listed. I won't read all the panel numbers to you unless you're excited about hearing them.
Not really.
Effective November 16th, 2011, that are now effective June 1st, 2022. They're adopted by reference for the purposes of administration of the Michigan Construction Code and declared to be a part of section 1612.3 of the Michigan Building Code, and to provide the content of the flood hazard section table R301.2 subsection 1 of the Michigan Residential Code. The provisions of this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after being adopted by the Municipal Council and duly published. The only other thing I'd state was the letter from EGLE in here. Matthew.
I don't know.
Starts with O and ends with TI.
Yeah, that's
Who, specifically provided that the language that we needed was the language that we put in. This is similar to the language that was in here from, I think it was last amended, I'm going to say a decade ago, roughly. Was it? Okay, 2011. So it's simply, stating what they need to have it state for it to be legally enforceable. So this is simply first reading. So if there's no changes, then it'll come back next meeting for approval.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, unfinished business. We moved from the consent agenda because Councilman Nowak needs to abstain from the approval of the revised lease agreements between the City of Alpena and All Marine and Storage LLC and Cochon LLC for the Alpena Marina store and shop areas. And really, it was just grammatical in several areas, straightening up phrases and things. So it wasn't any true change,
I'll just clean up.
which is why it was on the consent agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to approve those changes.
You have to,
Oh, yeah, we got to vote to get
you gotta give abstain. Let me vote to let me.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, sir.
If we allow Councilman Nowak to abstain from this vote.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Wolchek,
Yes.
and Mayor Walagora.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
That's
You guys are better at this than me. I don't know why I'm here.
So now I'll make a motion that we approve the revised lease agreement between All Marine and Storage LLC and Cochon LLC for the Alpena Marina store and shop area.
Second.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilwoman Wolchek,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And I'm back.
All right, so Carl and Jean have been very patient with us this evening, I'm sure, because the next up is new business, and this is first up is a Michigan Small Business Development Center, or SBADC proposal, and Carl Bordelais and Jean Lesarge-Bono is our.
Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. I'll kick off real briefly by talking a little bit about the Michigan SBDC. We're here to do a proposal to the city of Alpena for additional support to provide consulting one-to-one support to Alpena small businesses. A little bit about the Michigan SBDC. We're a statewide organization that offers consulting support to small business services. And it's really to entrepreneurs that are looking to launch a business or grow their business. The one-to-one support is free to small businesses. And the reason we do that in large part is because of the way that we're funded. We have 10 regional centers across the state of Michigan that serves all 83 counties. And the Northeast Michigan Regional Center, so it's our Lake Huron Regional Center, is hosted by Saginaw Valley State University. The way we're funded is that we receive funds by the SBA, and the SBA requires cash match. And so we receive our cash match support here in Michigan through the NEDC, through our host centers, so our 10 host centers across the state of Michigan, through municipalities and other local governments, as well as private businesses and foundations on a local regional level. The services that we offer technical support and education to small businesses. It includes things like startup assistance, market research, business recovery strategies, e-commerce solutions. We do quite a bit with financial assistance such as loan packaging, financial training tools, bookkeeping fundamentals, break-even analysis, cash flow analysis. And we help small businesses with their loan applications and other funding strategies as well. In addition to our one-on-one consultants that offer general business support, we also offer very high specialized services with consultants that have expertise in retail consulting or export consulting. We have cybersecurity specialty as well. And we also have two very specialized teams. We've got our tech commercialization team. They specialize in assisting advanced technology companies to commercialization. And we also offer our growth team. Our growth team specializes in companies that are getting a little bit bigger and they need some assistance in really expanding to that next level of growth. That can include anything from mergers, acquisitions, even investment and succession planning strategies so that business over time has a good way to close up and make it an investment for a business owner. And we also offer other online resources. So we have downloadable educational tools, online webinar training. We just concluded an 8-part series on QuickBooks Basics, for example. And we also have a very robust webinar library of past recordings that include a lot of information about business basics and how-to, such as how to form an LLC. Again, we're asking the city of Alpena for $10,000 to help the SBDC continue its services and provide some direct access to a dedicated SBDC consultant. That'll include quarterly education workshops and also one-to-one consulting that would be available at a location that a client would choose, and market research support. The resources also include some additional support things such as the comeback kit. And this is a resource that was actually created out of Northeast Michigan, and it helps small businesses that are looking to recover and stabilize. And the module includes things that help them with their financial analysis, some Z-scores, which is a financial term, and then appropriate actions to take to help them strategize. The consultant, of course, with this support for Alpena would provide those business recovery strategies, e-commerce solutions, business planning, cash flow analysis, other marketing initiatives specific for your local small businesses. And we'd also offer small business fundamental training. So things like starting a business, writing a business plan, financial management, marketing your business, and hiring your first employees. I'm going to segue from that explanation of what that ask is and what our services are, and I'm going to hand it over to Carl, who is our senior business consultant, and he's done a lot of work with Alpena businesses and can talk a lot about the outcomes of that work too. So Carl, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good evening. I'll try to make it quick. I've been with the SBDC now for a little over 25 years, and it's given me a great opportunity to build a tremendous network of referral sources throughout the area. And so anybody that's looking at starting a business, dealing with any business plans, usually can find a way to us without too much trouble. As a general rule of thumb, I normally see about 100 clients a year. Normally in the past, it was about 90% of those would have come from Alpena County, with about 70% from the city of Alpena. But now that with the pandemic, we've been doing a little bit more remote, so that's changed a little bit. Just currently, I have 64 active clients, and 39 of those are from Alpena County, and 18 of those are also either living in or working in the city of Alpena. We really work at trying to build long-term relationships, and I thought I'd share a quick piece of data with you. Of those 64 clients, I have 12 that I've been working with for over 5 years, and I have 11 that I've been working with for over 10 years. And we provide just a tremendous variety of help for any of the businesses with any issues. My specialties normally are things like strategic planning, marketing analysis, actual financial analysis. I sit down and work with clients developing business plans, financial reports on a regular basis, and helping them work with the banks to get their applications in order so that the majority of them, when they leave my office, are either ready to start something different because it wasn't going to work, or they're ready to go to the bank and get a reasonable chance at a loan. We don't have a lot of time, so if there are any quick questions, I'd be happy to address any of those about any of the work that we do.
Go ahead.
And you're funded through the federal government?
Yes, we have funding that comes from the SBA and so the Small Business Association, and then what they require is that we receive cash match in order to maintain that funding. And so we get some funding from the state level, so from the MEDC, we get some funding, and then we get them from our host centers. So Saginaw Valley State University provides some funding. We also get grant funding, we get some corporate funding, and municipal or locality funding as well.
So you meet your match.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And just to give you a little bit of a feel for the role that I bring to the SBDC, I'm working on additional funding for the SBDC because we've had such a dramatic increase in demand for our services. It won't surprise anybody that small businesses had a huge need for the SBDC in 2020. We had about a 700% spike in demand right in that March 2020 timeframe. It leveled out to about 150% of our 2019 demand, but yet in 2021, that demand is still continuing to increase, and we've got a 32% increase in demand for consulting support over what our 2020 numbers were. So small businesses have a lot of needs. They've got a lot of business recovery. They're struggling with things such as the human resources, staffing, inflation, supply chain costs, and really finding innovative ways to do their business. So a lot of what Carl was talking about are those business basics, but a lot of innovation in being able to help these businesses recover and sustain.
So, and I have one other question, maybe two. So are you asking for funding from any other local government entities?
Yes, we are. We're asking from the Alpena DDA. We're also asking from the Chamber. As far as local here to Alpena, we've had requests in with Bay City, so Bay Future. We're also making some other requests around the Northeast sector. So for this particular region, we are going to the local municipalities and looking for additional support.
And one of the reasons we're doing that here is that this has been probably the highest volume of usage of the SBDC support over the last 10 or 15 years.
I don't doubt what you do for small businesses and startups at all. As a matter of fact, my question, due to the potential impact of our budget, is can you provide us with a budget? I think in most of our Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe all of our contracts and terms with, well, they were in your budget here in Humane Society, the Hunt Team, Economic Development. We're going to require a budget from you to know where and how our contribution, if approved, might where it goes, and is that possible is that something that you do on an annual basis, or do you do ahead of time knowing what the FDA is going to approve for you or what your match needs to be?
Yeah, we have a budget that we have created by each of the regional centers. And so, yes, that is something that we can produce and give you a high level view of what our budget is for the Lake Huron region.
And I just wanted to comment as far as our budget, you know, this is not something that that's in the preliminary, obviously, because the request has come. So normally we have those requests come in probably in the March timeframe.
March,
April.
Right.
Yep.
Maybe even earlier.
Right. Yeah, and I certainly understand that, all the work that went into the budget already. I guess I'm just maybe just struggling a little bit in my mind as far as a taxpayer. I'm just kind of playing it out in my mind as if and I am a taxpayer, so we all are. So if the funding comes from, and you guys can just listen to me for a second, I guess, but if the funding comes from the federal government and then a match needs to be made and the state government is helping to meet that match, and then of course you have some other funding through the colleges and private enterprise, but then now as a city taxpayer, if I'm contributing part of my taxes towards the match as well, it's actually coming out of each of us individuals in the city in 3 different ways. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the struggle I'm having as putting this as a burden onto our local taxpayers, is that would be a 3rd way that they would involuntarily be funding the program. And it's honestly absolutely nothing to do with the program itself, because I've used it. But just the funding, I'm not convinced, but at the same time, I don't know if somebody wants to say, you know, hey, Matt, it's really not the right math to be using.
Yeah, and I think the best that we can say for you is hopefully this is an investment, or it's viewed from the perspective that this is a municipal investment on your local small businesses. Our goal by providing these services is to ensure that these businesses survive long into the future. It's to increase the sustainability of these businesses and to not have the business loss, both from a real estate perspective in the local municipalities, but from a tax basis as well. So we're hoping we're seen as that partner in the ecosystem of the municipalities, of providing strong businesses to increase that tax base that they're providing, to increase the job base to what the area needs as well. So it's that fundamental strength of what municipalities need for their small businesses to succeed. And that's the way we look at it. We do look at it as an investment to ensure the strength of local communities.
There's one other piece to look at, is that unless I'm wrong, Jane, in the past, the SBA has only funded about half of our annual budget. And the MEDC, although they put a significant amount in, it has come primarily for the technology side of our efforts. And so that it leaves a gap for funding from both the host and other partners, organizations. And the justification for the investment is strictly looking at the results of what the work does. And what we've reported in the past, and Mike has had an opportunity to share, we measure number of business starts the number of jobs created, and capital formation of our clients. And that's where you look at whether or not the investment is worth contributing to.
Yeah, if you look at this, the center of this report, what it says, we pulled the data specific to Alpena. So in the past 4 years, we've had 29 new business starts that we've actually consulted, over 6.2 million in capital formation, 172 jobs created and retained by working with 63 unique entrepreneurs and small businesses in the Alpena area.
Okay.
I piggyback on one of Cindy's questions.
Yep.
You said that you had made requests to different communities. How many of those requests have been approved?
Bay Future, we received an approval for that one. That one's a significantly larger project that we have. It's a 3-year project. It's been, I want to say the approval amount is for $325,000. And it's for all of the Bay County area. It's got a dedicated consultant, and there's programmatic work that is being done in the disadvantaged community with that. But the portion of that particular piece that was granted to the SBDC is $325,000.
And other municipalities?
We've got a request that we're working on with Rogers City. We've got a request that's in front of, I can't recall.
Is it Gaylord?
Carl?
Well, is it Gaylord or one of the others? And
Yeah, it's Gaylord. Thank you.
Okay, but nothing's been approved quite yet?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
Just to support there, Gene, the timing is Saginaw Valley hasn't really had the SBDC for all that long, and we've got a new regional director. So, and there've been a lot of changes. So our timing has been thrown off in terms of planning an approach to the governments as well.
Okay.
I have a question if I could ask one.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Do your services overlap or mirror in any way what our target Alpena does in terms of connection with small businesses in the area?
Direct collaboration. I used to sit on the target board by definition, and it's evolved to the point where anytime somebody goes to target looking for a loan, they normally will direct that individual, unless they're fully prepared and experienced, back to me to help them refine a business plan, do a feasibility study, and help them put their applications together. I've often in the past gone in along with a client to answer questions about the business plan. We're not allowed to be advocates, so I don't do that, but I certainly am a resource to help the communication between target and the borrower. And I know in the past, and I don't know if we're still the same verbiage in there, but all the agreements used to require a 6-month review of financials with me after a loan was approved. But I don't see that happening very often.
Do you receive any funding assistance from Target?
No, we do not.
Okay, you'd mentioned the chamber earlier, and that's under the umbrella of Target's under their umbrella. So I just wanted to clarify if you had directly from them.
The reason we chose to talk to the chamber rather than Target is because of the nature of where the funding for Target comes from, and where the funds for economic development, which are part of the chamber membership, are what are funding economic development in the region. And that's where an area where we felt we do fill a niche.
Mike Muller's on the call if you have any questions.
Yeah. See, I don't have any specific questions for Mike. Yeah, I don't know that I have any other questions at all. I would like Rachel to have a budget from you, if that's something that you can provide, with like where your current funding is coming from and what the shortfall is, and where a potential funding from the city would go. And then I would just refer it back to staff to to make a recommendation to us as far as our budget, like you do basically everything else. And we'll take it from there. Does that sound reasonable?
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Gene and Carl. And we'll look forward to hearing from you with that information. And do you need anything else that our other agreements have that
No.
I think everything else was in.
It would, if you move forward with this in the future, it would just be like one of our other service agreements.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you very much, and we'll certainly contact.
You should probably motion to postpone.
Well, no, it was just a presentation. It was a budget request, I'm sorry. I was waiting, you didn't even look up at me at all. So you'd like to postpone that? Okay.
I only said it because she told me to tell you.
And that's if everybody's okay with that. Is that fine?
Yes, that's fine. Information's always good.
I think so. Yep. Okay.
We'll see.
I mean, May 16th is our next meeting, Carl and Jean. So, I mean, can you get something to me here in the next week?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that motion's been made.
Did you make the motion to?
I didn't make a motion, but I will. I move that.
You're getting ahead of the game.
I support. The 16th, is that what we're doing?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I support.
I did it already.
Oh, you did that already. You beat him. See, she didn't hear it.
You hear me? Motion was made, so I don't know if that's.
Oh, it doesn't count then. Go ahead, call the roll if you will.
Councilman Nowak,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walczak,
Yes.
Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next up is the downtown stamped concrete bid recommendation. Steve Schultz.
Three memos, 3 minutes.
No.
Memo, 3 minutes? Can we do it?
And go.
On April 26, 2022, the city received and opened bids for the downtown stamped concrete. This project is intended to replace deficient brick pavers with colored stamped concrete within the city limits. This year, existing brick pavers along Carter Street and entering the Carter Street parking area will be replaced. Bid documents were sent to 7 vendors as well as posted on the city's website with 3 bids received. Zan Brothers being the low bid at $18,000. Zan Brothers has lots of experience with this work and has completed several similar projects in the past. And it's therefore my recommendation to city engineer to award the downtown stamped concrete to Zan Brothers for the unit prices totaling $18,000. This is it's a project that we've had for many years, just going through and methodically kind of replacing the old brick pavers that were there, keeping the same downtown look, I guess. You know, that's kind of what this has been targeted towards, so.
And thank goodness for 3 bids.
Can,
He knows I like that.
And oh yeah, and there's some,
can I,
this is what we're looking at.
I want to, I might throw a monkey wrench into this whole thing.
Okay.
When you go downtown and you look at, so we went at one point, thought that the brick pavers were going to be fantastic and
1986.
hold up.
Yep.
Then we thought, okay, so then we'll do the stamped brick pavers.
Mhm.
They don't hold up very well either. Some of them are cracking. So we have these, we have regular sidewalks and we have the red stamped brick pavers. The downtown, and this is just me, when you walk downtown, all of that color and different colors and different patterns and different material is horrible. I would rather have just regular concrete put into those spaces. And some, like there's a lamppost, and I was downtown today, there are lampposts that are just sitting on concrete, which then just kind of, because look at that, your eye breaks up because it's like you're looking at the sidewalk, then you're looking at the pavers. I would just rather have that uniform. And then we put in the color and those sorts of things with flowers and benches and those sorts of things that we put out. And you have a continuation of just, you don't have concrete brick, stamped brick that's cracking. Then, and
Is that right there, not to interrupt you, but that we're looking at, that's stamped brick?
no,
That's stamped.
That's stamped, that's not.
Concrete, right. That's stamped. Mhm.
And then if you go back another one, that's real.
That's real. That's real brick.
and that's in hexagon
Craig Schooner, 1995.
anywhere.
That's real.
That's real. But for me, and thinking of this in terms of what we plan on doing at Culligan Plaza and all of that, in uniform, making everything kind of uniform so that it looks pleasing, and it doesn't. Every street is different. That curb is horrible. Anyway, that's my thought process on trying to make things downtown more uniform and pleasing.
Can you go back to the stamped again, please?
That one.
And when you go down Second Avenue, because I came up on Second Avenue to hit Carter Street to kind of look at that again today. But when you're on the north side, from Miller Street going forward, you have a lot of brick pavers that need help. And you have some stamped stuff that looks, and the stamped stuff is a completely different color than the brick pavers. It's a brighter red than others when it's clean.
Yeah.
We just have such a mishmash downtown that I would like to see us get to a point where, so it's just more pleasing. And to me, it's just do concrete. So the sidewalks will look much wider. And we have a program going in this summer with planting around the tree bases. And I just want it to look.
May I respond? You know what? I do like the vibe that the bricks give downtown, but I agree with you. It's all different. It's a mishmash. Are there any alternatives where we could get the look, but not have that difference or something? Yeah. We could make it all cohesive.
I think if you go with just all concrete, though, in my opinion, and having a little experience with concrete, is all concrete cracks. Concrete will never match. So, it's a brighter, now it's not the gray that it used to be. It's going to be a brighter white almost. I do like that we started to change and go over to this concrete, because I think it kind of breaks it up, and it does kind of carry the look of a downtown out there. I understand what you're looking for of going to something more uniform. And if we're going to go uniform for the city, I would rather see us kind of go with something like this to break it up, or, see if there's going to be a uniform look that the DDA and stuff would like for entire downtown. I'm not a really big fan of doing all plain concrete. I don't think many municipalities actually do that. They look for something to make it unique and kind of do that. Your idea for different colored benches and stuff like that is one way, certainly, to kind of add what we're looking for, like the charm or the character within the downtown streets. And I think that's what they were trying to capture with going to the stamped concrete, because it was a little bit more durable than what the pavers were, if I recall correctly, because they shifted almost immediately once they went in. So,
well, Steve, the stamped concrete, if I understand right, is the kind where you would sit there and put the dye on the wet concrete, put the design, if you will, everything in like this, so you would not have a lifted brick out of something like that. So
right, and that is the idea behind it, is that you don't have individual bricks lifting up.
For the idea of the stamp myself, plus the fact if it gets dirty, you can power wash it. Not too heavy, but you can power wash it. You don't want to take the dye off of it too much.
Is there like maybe not a colored brick? I mean, we talked a little bit about this earlier, like grayish, something a little.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a gray. We've done that in a few other locations. You could just leave the concrete the way it is, and you put down the black release and you stamp it in. So then you have it would be like a gray brick with like the black grout. It would kind of look like that, as opposed to the reddish. We've,
The area we're talking about replacing, right?
right, this is where this money, it was slated for, right?
Well, what if we did? Maybe not black, but something a little bit darker than the asphalt. As far as the mortar look. So then it would be a compromise. It would have the different look in it than just a big square.
Have the different pattern.
But I would have to agree that I'm not really thrilled about the maroon colors in some of the other.
Okay.
Can we do it without a color?
You can either do without a color or, I guess I don't know what's available out there for if it's going to get too dark would be the only thing. So I guess my first suggestion might be to just leave it gray, put the black release on, stamp it, seal it, and
the black release does what?
black release is what allows you to put that rubber stamp down and then pull it up with, and then it.
Hence the release.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't leave a color behind.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll leave that black. The release is your black, and that's what happens with the red ones. The concrete is red as it goes down, and then you put the black release on it and you stamp it with the rubber, and then that leaves the black in the.
Yeah.
Is there?
Then there's power washing almost, as soon as it's curing and as soon as it's hardened, there's power washing that gets some of that release off to begin with.
Okay.
Some of that. There's these Zan and both Zan and Ryan, I know for sure have gone to the classes, and they're state approved. They're like week-long classes you go down to learn about this stuff. Just this.
Something you would.
Yeah, I would be good with that.
If we move toward consistency.
Consistency.
Okay.
What I would also like to request is that if we're going to do this, that especially downtown where all of this is anyway, but take sections of it and do an entire section. So next time it comes back, don't go, oh, let's do this piece over here because.
Well, and that was the thing is, it was like, it's mainly done because of what's out there that's bad or failing. And so we were only putting $5,000 and $10,000 at this at a time each year to fix areas like this. But if we want to have a program and we want to say throw $20,000 at it for the year and actually do a full block at a time, and let a contract like that somebody could come in and
should do at least the major,
do it down Second Avenue, that first section or whatever. And we can kind of bring some of that maybe to the council again, something of that nature, just a plan maybe to do some of that.
Uniform look.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It could be a trial area because it's not right on the main drag. This could be kind of a trial area. We could do the concrete, just the gray with the black grout and just see what you think of it.
Yeah.
Does that change
Yeah.
the price?
Well, what we'll do, it probably won't change it too much, but what we would do is just have them do the same amount with a reduction in the price accordingly. But I think I would probably just award it for the 18,000 because we don't know what that price is. And so it would just be a reduction. Possibly.
As long as I'm trying to picture how much of that black you can get back off, because we wouldn't want it to look like a shower wall.
No, right. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. And they've done so much experimenting with this and things.
Definition pattern.
Yeah, I'd rather not have a whole lot of grout.
We can, they've given us pictures before of some of the other stuff they've done. They've done, patios and stuff like that, the same type of thing. And so we can ask for some pictures, some of that stuff and,
that'd be great.
chop them around a little bit.
So we might even be able to get gray grout.
Gray release.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they can use a gray release. It sounds.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I don't know if you'd get enough. The black really helps identify where everything is versus you think it's deeper than it is, but it's not. It's because the black is in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So
we can do that.
Let's try that.
Based on what our discussion, if we can move in that direction, I move that we approve the bid to Zan Brothers to do Carter Street and the entrance to the Carter Street parking area. And I'm looking forward to it.
Second.
And the curb is part of the project as long as Anna keeps that parking lot in the.
So far, so good.
Yeah, that's a point.
All right, we got a second on that, or did we?
Yes, we did. Okay, Councilman Wolchek.
Yes.
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell
Yes.
and Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up is HMA patching program bid recommendations. Steve again.
On April 26, 2022, the city received and opened bids for the HMA patching program for 2022. This contract provides bituminous asphalt services to the city as needed, with cost billed to the appropriate line item and where the work is performed. Bid documents were sent to 5 vendors as well as posted on the city website, with only 1 bid received. Goodrich Trucking at $100,350. Goodrich is currently the 2021 HMA patching contractor for the city of Alpena. The proposed bid prices, as expected, have increased approximately $12,600 over the previous year due to increased fuel and material costs. As the work is predominantly small patches, it is not a lucrative project for an out-of-town contractor to undertake. The intent of the contract is to accumulate pricing for multiple items which may or may not be required over the course of the year. Previous year's contract totals have been averaging around $65,000 for the year. This amount is driven by the amount of work completed by city forces. Water main repair, sewer main repair, city services, things like that. Attached bid tab outlines the prices. It's my recommendation as city engineer to award the 2022 HMA patching contract to Goodrich Trucking for the unit prices totaling $100,350. This contract does allow for the possibility of one additional 1-year renewal if both parties agree on pricing.
Question, when they bill us at the final bid, and I understand the base rate is like $100,350, is it by ton? Is it broke down in units like that by ton per asphalt?
They're by ton per patch, but it's also different unit prices for the size of the patch, the tonnage based on the patch. Obviously larger area is going to be a little bit less per ton.
And the only question I have, and again, I don't want anyone to take this, Goodrich has been excellent to work with and been fantastic with us. I'm assuming you have checked with other areas just to make sure that the unit prices are all within line or?
Oh, very, very much so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I thought so. The last time I think you checked, they were actually, on the lower side.
But yeah. This is predominantly the work that Goodrich does. They don't do a whole lot of MDOT work, so they spend most of their summers doing the local work and things at these lower prices because they're not doing, they're not having to pay the MDOT wages for highway paving and things. So
Nope, I just wanted to clarify that because they've been fantastic to work with over the years for us. So. And predominantly, we only get one bid on this because this is the only company in the area.
Yeah, and quite frankly, if we had these other companies come into town, they may or may not have the time to get to us like we can have Goodrich get to us, on an emergency basis. These other groups are paving long hours during the summer, and to call them up on a Saturday night and say, hey, we got some prep for you on Monday morning, we need you here right now. I just don't know that it would necessarily happen.
That's the service part of it. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I move we award the HMA patching contract to Goodrich Trucking for the unit prices total $100,350.
Or
Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
yes.
Councilman Noah.
Yes.
Councilwoman Walchek.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Last up, water and sewer rate recommendations for fiscal year 22-23.
With the budget nearing completion, the budgeted costs for water and sewer can now be utilized in developing the proposed water and sewer rates for the next fiscal year. As we began the process, last fiscal year's water and sewer volumes were obtained from the utility office, as has been the standard practice in developing rates for the past several years. The sewer volume billed was 439,157 1,000 gallon units, and the water volume was 493,737 1,000 gallon units. Based on past practice, the volumes in dollars in the calculations are based on a 5-year rolling average. The difference from fiscal year 21 to proposed fiscal year 22 is shown below. You see we went down a little bit in sewer at 3.7%, and the flows went up just about 0.5% in water. As can be seen, the utilities show a negligible difference from last year. And for the proposed fiscal year 23, 5-year average for operation and maintenance costs are as follows. The difference between the 2 years, only about 0.1% in sewer, but we're up about 3.7 in water, which averages out to about 2% increase. And so this need for a minimal increase in rates to achieve the funding level needed to operate and maintain the system is evident, but it's not, we don't need a huge increase, which is good to see. Upon generating the calculations, the increases proposed for water and sewer are as follows. For water, we go from a $6.65 rate to $6.78 for a percentage increase of 1.95. And the sewer is from $6.79 to $6.94 for a percentage increase of 2.21 for a total average of about 2.08 increase. With the proposed rates as shown above, the city would anticipate generating approximately $1.9 million for reinvestment into the system for capital improvements. And then the table shown there is the general table that goes in the budget to show everything. And actually none of this has really changed except for those 2 water and sewer commodity charge numbers. So.
And are you looking for approval on this today so you can get it in the budget for 2 weeks from now, or do we want to wait and do this as part of the budget on?
I think it's been done both ways. I don't.
On the same day before, and well, actually before it used to be just part of the budget, and then we put.
Yeah, it was me.
Oh yeah, that's right. Mike wanted it pulled out, didn't he?
Yeah. which was fine. It's fine. So it's neither here nor there to me because it seems reasonable. I have no objections to it whatsoever. So
I don't have any objections to it, but I would just rather approve it with the budget.
Yeah, I think that was the initial conversation, is that we wanted to be able to do this. And if we were going to be a no, once the budget documents were all put together, then they would, know where we wanted to go. Would kind of give them some direction if I recall correctly, Bill.
Okay.
If I don't, but, I have, just to give you an idea, I have no objections whatsoever. I think everything is reasonable. I think that, there's a lot of expenses going up on every other utility and stuff like that. And I think we're doing our very best to kind of keep those increases the very minimum. So I appreciate that work.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Do you need any action on that at all?
Either approve or postpone.
Okay.
So let's postpone that as
I know
well.
that we postponed the rate increases for water for when we approve the budget. And
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
yes.
Councilman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Nowak?
Yes.
And Mayor Walagora?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Take us out.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for doing that.
I move that we adjourn. Heck with that often.
No.
Oh, no. 'Cause I agree with you.
There we go.
Let's have it.